Good evening. It's Thursday, October 7th. This is the Arlington Heights School District 25 Board meeting. We are currently in open session. First, we have a public hearing on waiver of administrative cost cap. Is anyone here for that public hearing? No? Not seeing too many hands go up. Oh, can't hear me? Can we hear me now? All right, AT&T. All right, is anyone here for the public hearing on waiver administration cost cap? No? All right, so we will forego that from the agenda. Yep, so we can officially close that meeting. Now it is the open meeting of the Arlington Heights School District 25 Board meeting. Madam Secretary, if you will note the roll, let's move directly to the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, good evening. We have, I believe, two presenters here for the recognition and presentations portion here. Kemi Sessler and Donna Bingaman.
Hi, my name is Kemi Sessler. I'm the principal at Dryden Elementary School, and we had some highlights that we wanted to share with you about Dryden today. Our themes for this school year continue to be empowered to learn and being a light. When we talk about being empowered to learn, you might see our staff wearing our dolphin t-shirts with our superhero capes, because we really want our students to know that they can have a lot of ownership in their learning, and we want them to be self-directed. And we really want them to enjoy learning by being curious, asking questions, learning to explore their interests, learning to give and receive feedback, and set goals and be reflective in their own learning as well. And when we talk about being a light, this theme just kind of seemed to organically come about last year in December. There was a beautiful song by Thomas Rhett about being a light when things are really tough and when there's a lot of darkness, and how we can really have some ownership in looking at things in positive ways and making a positive impact and a positive difference. So we talk a lot with our students to be solution-oriented and really looking for the good things that are happening and really shining a light on those things as well. Things that we're really excited about this year are the fact that we're all together again at school, and that we get to learn and play and have recess, Friday dance parties, that we can build things and solve problems and play games together. So we're super excited about that. Another thing that we're really excited about is our continued focus and growth in social emotional learning, especially with our ruler program and tools that we're having. And then the third thing is all of these awesome new resources that we're receiving from our school district this year. Our teachers have just gone through a lot of great training on the literacy footprints toolkits, so they're super excited about that. We know some math tools are coming in. Our specials teachers are super excited about the African drumming professional learning that they're going to have, and the lacrosse training that they're going to have in PE, and the social emotional learning things that they're going to have in art. So we're just so grateful and excited about those things as well. When we talk about our enrollment for this year, we have currently 478 students enrolled at Dryden. In kindergarten, we have 70 students, and then in first grade, as is typical, we see a little bump, so we have 81 students, and then in second grade, 81 students as well. Third grade is 77 students, fourth grade, 89 students, and fifth grade, 80 students. So that's a little bit about Dryden. How about Greenbrier?
Good evening. I'm Donna Bingaman. I'm the principal of Greenbrier Elementary School. Thanks for having me tonight. I have a feeling that you're going to hear a theme as the schools present, as a lot of us are excited about the same things. Our theme for this year is Let Your True Colors Shine. We're really focused on our new social emotional curriculum and very excited to have that roll out. We worked with the staff last year and found it very powerful. And so as you can see, we're excited about introducing Ruler to our students and staff, or our students and our families. I've been in this district a long time, and we've rolled out other social emotional curriculums and never had anything quite as successful as this has already been. To have my teachers coming to me and saying, we just completed our charter, you wouldn't believe the words that they came up with and the actions that they want to do in order to feel that way in our classrooms. And being able to do that same charter with our staff at the beginning of the year to kick off our year just helps to make it all seamless. Second thing we're excited about is having all of our students back in the building and having things just a little bit more normal. Last Monday we had our first parent meeting for band, and it was so nice to be able to welcome our parents back into the building instead of greeting them on the phone and saying, hi, yeah, just come in and leave it on the shelf. So it was really great to see them, and we're looking forward to lots of more fun events. Wednesday morning, feel free to stop by. It's breakfast at Greenbrier. We're having our buddy breakfast outside. And then finally, our new literacy and math resources that Akemi talked about as well. Staff is excited to put these into use for the classroom and really work with our students to just continue their growth. We've done some testing, we know where our kids are, and we're just looking forward to moving them forward. As you can see, our enrollment is up there. We're about when this was collected, we were at 396. I do believe we've added a couple of early childhood students since then. We are the building in the district that hosts the early childhood program, and those students do roll in as they turn 3 if they have special needs. We are, 2 sections at most grade levels and 3 at our 2nd and 3rd grade, but we're small, but we're mighty. And you can wear a Greenbrier shirt at probably just about every school, and there's a Greenbrier student in there somewhere, because once a Gator, always a Gator. Thank you.
Thank you for the update.
Mr. President, if I could just jump in real quickly.
Absolutely.
I wanted to thank all the principals and schools for inviting the board to come for tours. And this week we were fortunate enough to go to Dryden Elementary, and it was so exciting. And we thank Ms. Sessler for showing us around Dryden School. And we definitely saw some empowered Dryden Dolphins who were getting ready for a dance party with Echo the Dolphin. So that was really exciting. So, and Wednesday breakfast at Greenbrier sounds great. Thank you.
All right, so if anybody else needs breakfast plans on a Wednesday, there you go. All right, let's move on to item number 5, community input. I do have a little public statement here. The opportunity to speak to the board is provided for members of the public who have a comment to make about the business of the board. The board appreciates hearing from stakeholders and values your thoughts and questions. As the board strives to make the best decisions for the district, public input can be helpful. In order for the board to reserve sufficient time to conduct its business and operate its meeting in the spirit of civility and decorum, speakers are expected to follow the following guidelines. Address the board only at the time provided on the agenda and only after being recognized by the board president. Identify yourself and be brief. Your comments must be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. The board may shorten this allowed time in order to conserve time to allow the maximum number of people in the community to speak. And third, please be respectful and courteous, as the board requests that you do not make statements that are personally disrespectful or condescending to members of the board or staff. The board typically does not respond to comments or attempt to answer questions during the public comment period, but we do listen intently and appreciate the input from our community. All right. So we do have a fair number here. Let's start with Mr. Greg Lindley.
Good evening to all of you. I never thought that I would ever be speaking at the District 25 board meeting again, but here I am. On September 23rd, a few district colleagues and I explained why we had decided not to be vaccinated and why we would not be tested. That night, I was disheartened to see that not one board member was willing to stand up for us. When the vote on the MOU came up, there wasn't even any discussion. The best part of the night, however, was that our middle school principals had a chance to talk about their new school slogan, "Brave enough to take a stand." My District 25 colleagues who spoke that night did just that. I'm proud to say that the three of us stood together in the fire, and yet we know there was another standing with us, and he remains with us. Tonight, however, I'm here to speak for the children of Arlington Heights. My son and his wife, who live in Arlington Heights, have 3 boys that are 5 and under. On their behalf, I have a few questions for the board. You decided not to take a stand against the governor's mandate when it came to teachers who could not comply with the vaccine mandate. The question is, at what point will you decide to take a stand for our children? If the governor mandates that unvaccinated students need to be segregated from vaccinated students on buses, will you take a stand? If the governor mandates that unvaccinated students need to be segregated from vaccinated students in school, will you take a stand? If the governor creates a mandate that states all children have to be vaccinated in order to go to school, will you finally take a stand? Or will you always stand behind your lawyers who state that it's best to follow the mandates no matter what? We already see some of these scenarios being discussed, and some are even coming to fruition. I have heard that District 25 has received millions of dollars of ESSER funds from the government, and if you don't comply with state mandates, you would lose that money. That includes both the mandates for teachers being vaccinated and the mask mandate for students. My final question to the board is this: will money be the main issue that guides all your decisions concerning COVID? Or will the well-being and the rights of our children be what guides you? I believe each one of you were elected to this board because you truly have the children's best interest in mind. It's now time to prove it. And I will tell you that each of you will be in my prayers because I know that the task ahead of you is daunting. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindley. Next is Ilia Fishman.
My name is Ilia Fishman. I have 3 kids in Arlington Heights. So I'm a father, I'm a doctor, I'm an internal medicine doctor. I want to make a short presentation about childhood vaccination. I wish I can project my slides, so I have little boards to show everybody. So about the necessity of vaccinations for the children. So I would like to present the data from CDC, official data for everybody to see and think about those. So if you look at the incidence and cases for the kids, they're quite low. I would wish you can see the slide. On the other part of the slide, there's a mortality for the kids. So if we have a mortality for the adults and mortality for the kids, obviously mortality for the kids are very, very, very small, less than 0.1%. Mortality start to go up at the ages 18 to 29. The mortality go up to 0.6%, according to CDC data. If we look at the transmission of COVID-19 in the children, we can find out official data from CDC that transmission in a household is lower than those in adults, about 11 to 16% depending on different sources. In adults, especially in the spouses, the transmission obviously is higher, about 37%, almost 40. Other data about transmission in a school is very interesting data for everybody. The transmission from child to child is 0.3%, shockingly very low. The transmission from child to staff is about 1%. The transmission from child staff to child a little bit higher, 1.5%. And the Swiss researchers, they have looked at about 2,000 students, and they have no cluster data of COVID-19. I want to point out another data from CDC. As of July 16th, the data is available online for everybody to see. 8.9 million U.S. adolescents were vaccinated with mRNA vaccine. We do unfortunately see some, most of the side effects are non-serious, but we do see serious side effects, about 9.3%. I would say that I do treat adult population, and I don't see such a high percentage of serious side effects, including myocarditis, 4.3%. As you know, myocarditis is inflammation of the heart muscle that may be transient, but we don't know how long this problem may last. 4.3% is a shockingly high data, and you can look at the CDC data. If you look at the problem of 9.3%, if you look at the various data, it's serious complications include hospitalization, life-threatening illnesses, permanent disability, and death. 9.3% is quite a high data. There's some information about problem with menstrual cycle after mRNA vaccination, and this data also available in Lancet is British journal, so also available for everybody to see.
Excuse me, Mr. Fishman, I hate to interrupt. I see you have quite a number of slides left. We are out of time for this presentation. I would encourage you to email it to us.
Obviously, almost done. 1 minute.
Okay.
And also we'll see long-term side effects, which is never studied, including celiac disease, thyroid disease, and side effects like multiple sclerosis also is additional data. I want to look at the other countries, how they deal with the pandemic, including Sweden and countries that were vaccinated sooner, earlier in December. So we see the spikes, countries that were vaccinated in December. This fourth spike was higher than other spike in spite of vaccination. In other countries that, like Sweden, that didn't do masking and vaccine mandates, their mortality rate is much, much lower, saying that important to vaccinate people who are at risk, but children are not at risk. I wanted to summarize that in January, the shift of treatment COVID-19 will go to therapeutics. All that I want to say to summarize it, that routine vaccination for COVID-19 in the children is not good for the children. It individually should be decided between parent and the family, but not the school. I want the board to look at the data. I'm going to leave it for everybody to see. This data is official data from CDC, and I would like the board to stick with the data, not with opinion of the governor, but the data, official data, and the science.
Thank you. All right, Kim Dyer.
Hi, Kim Dyer. I live at 425 South Pine, where I've lived since 1985. I've attended school board meetings since 1988 on a regular basis, serving on over 8 to 10 different district committees, Dryden PTA president, and having the privilege of being a teacher in the district, served as ATA president. I understand the board's rules and meetings rules better than most people. I've been to more board meetings than some of the current board members. With that being said, last board meeting you were presented with a petition that was signed by about 500 residents. We know that if I stand up and speak, I can represent the opinion of 20 to 200 other residents who don't have the knowledge to come to these meetings and speak, or don't have the courage to come to these meetings and speak. So if you have a petition that's signed by 500 people, it really reflects the opinion of way more people. At the end of the last board meeting, it was moved and voted unanimously that the board would not address the question on the petition at this time because things could change. I didn't see the petition. I don't know what the petition said. I know it had to do with COVID. This is my concern. If that many people wanted the board to address this question the way they wrote it, why would the board not put it on their agenda and discuss it? Even if it's something as simple as, well, our lawyer said that we shouldn't discuss it this way, at least the community would feel heard and the community would know that you cared about their question rather than just not addressing it at all. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett Pilathonis?
Hi, good evening. I have 3 topics that I would like to bring up this evening. And I wanted to point out what the Dryden principal said earlier, which is to be the light and to be solution-oriented. And I think you all need to take a step back and look at what we can do for our school today. My first topic is full-day kindergarten. There was a committee of the whole meeting on September 2nd in which a presentation gave several options and direction was given to come back with a solution, but I do not see that on the agenda today nor last board meeting. Anisha, Greg, Rich, and Gina, as a reminder, you all ran for a seat on this board saying that you would support full-day kindergarten being added to our district. I would appreciate your continued efforts in this area as the timeline keeps shrinking. Ms. Leswicki mentioned how beneficial full-day kindergarten would be for children with IEPs and 504s, and as we enter out of this pandemic, we will see more children that need support in full-day kindergarten. There is a bigger picture than just the numbers in front of you. Please look at each school separately. How many classrooms are available within the individual buildings, and what would be needed to make this successful? I thought Dr. Bine had a great idea of starting something first, utilizing what we have, then use a model that will work, and we'll truly see how we could continue to grow. The time is now. Please put our children first and offer full-day kindergarten to those that choose it. Next, I would like to address changes in school buildings and communication out to parents. While I understand things change often with COVID and the pandemic rules, I believe it is important that when changes occur inside a school building or a classroom, parents need to be notified of those changes. What might seem small to you is a huge adjustment for elementary age students. My daughter came home from school informing me that she now has to eat her snack out in the hallway with 3 other students, and that now there is a select group of kids that get to sit on the carpet. The lunchroom has changed, and she is now required to sit facing one way and not the other. She is now being scolded for being too close to others on the playground. My son is told at lunch outside in middle school they aren't allowed to get up or talk to friends. Now they must face in one direction. Again, I'm not here to dispute these rules or try to understand the logic behind them, because there simply is none. I simply ask that parents be informed of changes like this. It has been a long 18 months with lots of changes, but you need to allow parents the opportunity to coach and manage their children, not finding out through a child crying, thinking they are unsafe or thinking that they didn't follow the rules. And finally, lunch. I would like to encourage Dr. Bine to have all schools, not just the selected one, to have outside lunch at least for 4th and 5th grade to allow more students to spread out and reduce the close contacts. I understand this might be challenging for younger grades, but 4th and 5th should have that option. And finally, I heard that you said tonight that you have visited several schools. I would like to ask that you go back, watch what is happening during these shield testing. Watch what is happening during the lunchroom and the classrooms. It's time for the board to take back and play an active role in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Eva Buchik?
My name is Eva Buchik. I have 2 kids at District 25. I'm not sure if you know this, but a video clip from our last board meeting was featured on several websites that advocate for freedom of choice. That was fun to see. Less than 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a lady from our district who handles mask exemptions. After I proved to her that the mask is hurting my 6-year-old daughter, she sent me an email saying, I quote, "If you would like additional information about the safe and effective use of face masks, simply let me know." Can it get more ridiculous than this? Seriously, guys. My 1st grader used to love school. Now she's stressed about it every morning. My 7th grader doesn't feel the same about her school either. The school is not addressing it, so I as a parent must address it somehow. If next time my daughter tells me she doesn't want to go to school, I will call the absence hotline and say my kid didn't go to school today because she needed a mask break. I think this is a valid reason for not going to school since they don't have any mask breaks. Well, except gym, but can you imagine running in a mask? I guess there will be no choice in winter. Do you realize that our children who do not have COVID are having symptoms similar to COVID from wearing a mask for 7 to 9 hours a day? Putting aside the physical health issues caused by a mask, which you fail to acknowledge, I have a question for which I'd like to receive a response in writing. What are you doing to address the emotional and social implications of wearing facial coverings by students? Thank you.
Jerry Berger.
Good evening, once again. First off, I'd like to start by saying that I carry no animosity or anger as I say what I'm about to say. Chad, we went to high school together. I went to high school with you. We've been friends a long time. We played football together. I'm here tonight to express my thoughts on my current situation and the notice of exclusion I recently received from Dr. K's office. I'm also appalled that the school district is billing me and another staff member in the same situation for the board portion of our benefits to the tune of over $1,600 per month while we're on unpaid administrative leave. When I called to speak with the benefits manager about this, she couldn't give me an answer and offered to direct me to Dr. K. I declined at the time, but I was disappointed that the manager of our benefits department could not answer my simple question. I have been told that I am being given an additional month to, quote, remedy the situation and comply with the mandate, end quote. It was also stated that if I comply and show proof of vaccination and negative COVID test prior to 10/15, I will not be charged for my benefits moving forward, and I will be able to return to my position. Neither of these is a viable option, as my conviction has not wavered or changed. I truly believe that this mandate is wrong, and that testing only those who are unvaccinated or don't want to share their status is discriminatory, and I do not need an additional month. And I do not need an additional month to remedy the situation. I cannot and will not comply with the governor's unconstitutional mandate, and I will not be bullied or coerced into changing my position. My question to you is this: how much longer is this going to go on? Dr. K stated in his last email to me, quote, that he did not feel it was appropriate to make the recommendation for this week regarding a notice of remedy recommendation to the school board. As I stated above, I do not need further time to remedy the situation, and I call upon the school board of District 25 to act. I have made up my mind. It's time for you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Rachel Schwartz.
Hello, my name is Rachel Schwartz, and I'm a resident of Arlington Heights and a mom of 2 kids, ages 6 and 3. I have a medical background with a master's degree in nursing, and I'm a certified family nurse practitioner and have worked in a pediatric office for 3 years. I'm here today to talk and provide unbiased dialogue and facts regarding masks as it pertains to my medical and professional experience. I would first like to say I am not anti-mask or anti-vax. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I am fully vaccinated, and my children and I faithfully wear a mask where required. COVID is an airborne illness. The mask that is proven to protect against airborne illnesses is the N95. This mask must be worn this way, taken off, cleaned, thrown away, followed by washing your hands. There is a certain protocol that coincides with using this mask to prevent the spread of viruses such as COVID. The challenge with speaking to this issue is there is a difference between a mask and a face covering. The variety of face coverings I see worn in schools and in society are not masks that would be worn in a hospital or medical institution. Therefore, there is no way to validate that they do anything to prevent the spread of this airborne disease. It seems that just about any face covering is acceptable, so as long as it covers the children's nose and mouth. We are also finding in the medical world that there are psychological and developmental issues that are starting to rear themselves. One thing to note that we are seeing in the medical field is a tremendous spike in RSV. This is extremely concerning, and according to my friend, who is a pediatric ER doctor at Lutheran General, may be related to a long period of staying home and wearing masks, leading to a lack of exposure to different viruses, weakening their immune system. With that said, my professional opinion is the masking of young children seems to be more pointed at covering their face as opposed to protecting them from this virus. If we were truly interested in preventing the spread of this virus, we would subscribe to the proper mask and the proper mask wearing protocols. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rachel. Nikki Richmond.
Gotta lower that. Good evening. My name is Nicole Richman, and I come here today as a citizen and a mother of the Arlington Heights community, a community I've called home for the last 38 years. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you to the board for giving me this chance to speak. Currently, my full-time occupation is being a mom to 3 beautiful young children, Grant, Anthony, and Gianna. However, I'm not only a mother, I am also an educator. I have a master's degree in education, and I worked for District 211 for 14 years. As a fellow educator, I am saddened at this current state of our education system. I have noticed a negative change of the system and the cultural ethics over the years that is adversely affecting our kids of today. This is one reason I made the decision to quit my job as a teacher, the hardest decision I had to make. I instinctively knew that I needed to be more focused on raising and nurturing my own children in this chaotic environment. Like every parent here, my husband and I understand that we have been entrusted with the lives of our children. They are our dependents, not yours, and rely on us for everything. For us, this is our number one priority in life, to devote ourselves to our children and be responsible for nurturing them into confident, contributing members of this society. However, more and more it feels as if those lines of responsibility are being taken from us. Boundaries have been overstepped to a point where individuals who are not a child's parents are wrongly taking responsibility in managing their physical well-being. I am here to serve as a voice for all the mothers in this room, for all mothers in this district, by saying this: leave our children's bodies and minds to us. We are the ones who have been entrusted with them. Masking these children is damaging, and we have yet to realize what those long-term effects look like and what those ramifications could be. We now have enough experience and time under these mandates to prove that masking for prolonged periods of time, especially in schools where kids go to learn, is in fact harmful to our children at all levels, physically, emotionally, and psychologically, and we are experiencing that firsthand in our home. We surveyed 100 parents in our district. 25% stated they have legitimate damages that they can prove. And guess what? We did this survey in under 48 hours. How many more are there that we don't even know about? This is a liability. I want to close by saying this. As parents and elected board members, you have a moral obligation, and you must have an appreciation for what we are requesting here. The time has come for you to follow your moral compass and do what is right. Put the choice back into our hands, the parents.
Mary Ann Corcoran.
I'm glad Mrs. Sessler was here today. The first thing I wanted to say is how wonderful she is and what a great job she's doing over at Dryden. So everything she said, we fully support. It is my understanding that according to D25 Policy 812, Community Relations, the board endorses the concept that community participation in the affairs of the schools is essential for us to all work together to improve the quality of the education for students. So the board and the staff, you're weighing all the advice you're receiving from all different places, but then you are using your best judgment to arrive at the decisions. So I'm here today as part of that partnership between school, family, and community to express some concern about the existing policies related to masks and to be a part of the solution to the problem that the mandate has caused for a number of children in District 25. You've heard me already discuss the harm that masking has on children, but I'm not here to advocate against masking. I'm here to advocate for optionality. just as I was here last year advocating for the option to send our kids to school in person. Optionality puts the decision-making regarding health and well-being of children with the parents where it belongs. So the recent timeline of events is relating to masking, as I understand it, is this. Prior to the governor's mandate, ISB voted to allow each school district to decide its own mask policy. D25 agreed, voted 6-0, and then prior to school starting with no substantial change in infection rate, the governor implemented the mask mandate. ISB, without legal authority, then threatened to revoke recognition status for any school that failed to comply. Without questioning the legal authority behind ISB's threat, the schools across the state, including D25, implemented the mandate in fear of losing recognition. More recently, several districts in Illinois have fought and won lawsuits against the state and regained their recognition status. Others have fought and won against the legality of forced masking and quarantining of healthy students. Now, when asked when the mandate will end or the optionality will be implemented, there is no answer from ISB governor or the CDC. As parents, we have complied with our responsibilities to abide by the mandate, and we've masked our children for the last 18 months. But that begs the question, how much longer do we have to subject our children to this? Our children are suffering with no end game in sight. Our vaccine rate is high, our death rate is low, and the case rate is even lower. I was raised and educated to be an independent thinker and unafraid to stand up for what is right. I have learned to steer clear of relationships that are unbalanced or abusive. I have counseled patients in the same matters. Unfortunately, what we are seeing in our world, country, state, and city is an unhealthy relationship with narcissism. We are constantly being told what to do, how to do it, and told that we are wrong when we try to resist. The powers that be have taken control of the most precious thing in our lives, our children. That is my hill to die on. That is my last straw. I am not a domestic terrorist, no matter what the FBI says. I am not a squeaky wheel, and I'm not a troublemaker. I've been called all of these names and far worse for simply being unwilling to be gaslighted by the narcissists in power. Just because they have an end game that they benefit from does not mean we should roll over and take it. Please, stand up for us. Stand up for our kids and show the community that we all work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Karen Wolfe. Karen Wolfe? No?
There should be a Richmond in there. 10.
Oh. Oh, yep, sorry about that. Stuck to Nick Richmond. Sorry about that.
Thank you for having us. My name is Nick Richmond, and I am a concerned citizen of the city of Arlington Heights, as well as someone here to speak on the behalf of the community. Hopefully, this is actually the first time I've came to a board meeting here. I hope this is the last time I come here under these circumstances. I'm not sure if any of you are sports enthusiasts. I understand we have some football players here on the board. Greg, you look like an athletic guy. But I'm sure if you've played sports in your lifetime, you know that there are basics of every game where participants share a collective understanding of what the rules are and how the game is played and how time limits work. There are even coaches, referees, and even a goalpost. And so what I'd like to ask of you is, in this crazy game of a school year where there really is only one referee, Governor J.B. Pritzker, if you were to choose collectively, what do you suppose a potential goalpost should be for us to achieve a mask optional scenario? Is it a 0% positivity rate? I think it's safe to say that's an impossibility. So is it somewhere between 0 and where I last checked we were at 1.7% on a local level? And if so, what is it specifically? Is it to mask indefinitely? And who's willing to do that? Anyone? No one that I know. No one that's on either side of the argument I know wants to mask their children indefinitely. And we all want this to go away too, right? But we have to use some common sense. So are we going to vaccinate every child? Is that the goalpost? Unfortunately, a blanket policy such as this will still not achieve a 0% infection rate. Nothing will. Nothing will. So the only goalpost we've been provided, including all of us, including you, and by every institution, is that they're waiting on the CDC and the governor to provide one. So I'm here to tell you, as a concerned parent and as a part of this community, a big part of this community, that we are done waiting. We're done waiting. You heard my wife. So I reviewed your communication policy, specifically section 8.95 as it pertains to the collaboration between parents and the school board. So allow me to paraphrase this duty. Keep parents and guardians thoroughly informed about their child's school and education. We are requesting that you, District 25 School Board, provide us with an endgame metric to achieve optionality. We have done this before. You have done this before. All of you, I think many of you in the room, you can do it again. You can do it again. So allow me to provide you with some encouragement. We live in a culture that's partly shaped by a variety of Supreme Court decisions that celebrate the power of the individual to make decisions about their body. My body, my choice. You've heard this before, I'm assuming. The people of Illinois took this one step further in 1998 when they codified the celebration of this power, the power of the individual, when the legislature enacted the Health Care Right of Conscience Act. That act, it protects people from government and businesses requiring things that go against the individual's convictions relative to their sovereign body. Mask optionality is well within the spirit of this statute. So to deny the parents the right to choose whether or not their child wears a mask is in direct violation of the statute. So to fail to provide us with an end date for the mandate is failure to keep us thoroughly informed of our children's education, which is contrary to District 25's own policies. So we're clear, I want to be clear, and I think my wife got a little spirited, but I believe we're all here because we choose communication and collaboration first, okay? And foremost, we want to go by the terms of your policies, the communication that's spelled out in your policies, which I studied. Two-way communication was a part of that too. I understand there's some people that are due responses. So we respectfully request of you to work to provide us with an end game metric to achieve optionality. And if there's a goalpost, or excuse me, if there isn't a goalpost, then we demand optionality immediately. The continued requirement that we must mask our children does more harm than good, and it discriminates against parents and children by denying parents the right to choose what is best for our own children. So please do not force us to avail ourselves of this right in court. Thank you for your time. We look forward to continued dialogue.
Thank you. All right. Now we'll try Karen Wolfe.
All right. Can everybody hear me? Okay. So my name's Karen Wolfe. I have 2 children in the district. Thank you again for allowing me to speak today. So I just want to further what Nick was saying regarding masking and quarantine and testing, and also in light of the law that he mentioned with the Health Care Right of Conscience Act, that there are parents proactively preparing to join a lawsuit. We are finding ourselves in a position where we have to go down this path. This suit will be heard in Southern Illinois, and they likely will rule based on what the Constitution and the law say, which are that the mandates are unlawful. We can detach D25 from the suit if we can get that goal that Nick was talking about for removing mitigations and making masks optional, or get the optionality right now. The thing is, and a lot of us have been saying this, ISB may not even retaliate. They know they don't have the power you're giving them. They're already losing in court, where schools are getting back their recognition status, and JCAR voted unanimously that ISB hasn't shown their authority to do what they're doing. We would really like to work with all of you. No one really wants it to come to this. We understand your volunteers, we appreciate all your hard work, but when you continue to refuse to work with parents and consider our input, we're put in a very difficult position. We want to stand with you as you stand with us and our children. So the question a lot of people are asking is, when is enough enough? Is there a line you won't cross? And how much longer will you accept this without a discussion of will it will end? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 5 years? So please stop to think about the fact that your short-term decisions have very real, very long-term consequences. I know at least some of you might want to take the district in a different direction. So please know that you don't have to keep mindlessly following edicts with no end in sight. I know you might fear taking heat if you take a stand and take back local control. but have you thought about the positive impact you could have on our school community and how many people would thank you for doing right by the students? Attorney Tom DeVore has already won many of these cases. The cost of the district to defend against this would likely be more than to defend against ISB if they did decide to retaliate. You made the decision back in July for choice. You had the courage then, so I'm urging you to have the courage again. We don't need to use more time, money, and resources. As parents, we're fighting to get back rights that never should have been revoked in the first place. There are so many important topics to tackle, topics that actually have something to do with education. It has to end sometime, right? Or are we going to mask and test our children indefinitely and damage them forever? Parents are ready to join this lawsuit to be filed late next week. If the board decides to revert to optionality or give us some sort of a metric, we can drop D25 from the suit. At this point, we have no choice but to cover our bases. We don't want to have to work around you or against you for the health and safety of our children. We'd rather work with you in bringing back the district to the one we used to know and love. So lastly, with all the noise, please just take a step back, gain some perspective, and then move forward for what's best for the students in this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I would like to remind you, however, that none of the decisions made up here are mindless. Aside from that, thank you for speaking. Carrie Hood.
Hi, I'm Carrie Hood. I have two kids over at Ivy Hill. This past week, both of my kids were forced to stay home for a week due to other children testing positive. While it has been shown that contact tracing for anyone who has 0 symptoms is not necessary, my question is more on the testing policy. Why can a masked person who is less than 3 feet take the test the next day, but an unmasked one who is less than 6 feet cannot take the test until day 6 or 7? Does this mean you don't trust the test? The test does not know how far apart you were from someone, nor does it know if you were wearing a mask or not. It just detects a virus, albeit not very accurately. The rules should be consistent. Either test for any close contact day 1 for everyone, or make everyone wait until day 7. My biggest concern, however, is that since my children were forced to be out of school for a whole week, they would fall behind in their classes. I asked the principal, along with their teachers, to give me their books, along with whatever lessons they were going to miss, so that we could work with them at home to keep them caught up. When I was told it was district policy not to give lessons to parents, it made me realize how little any of this makes sense. First off, why can't you tell parents what our kids are missing in class? What are you hiding from us? We should know that any day we ask. The teachers already have their lesson plans, so why can't they simply send an email or post on Seesaw to read whatever chapters, or here's the pages we did in math or reading, etc.? Dr. Bynes' explanation was simply that it's district policy and that they have the academy. I can tell you after my 3rd and 5th graders sat through this for 2 days, the exact same Zoom for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders doesn't work. They learned nothing and said it was more like story time. This is now no fault to the online teacher, as this is just impossible. In school, we have separate classes and separate teachers for every grade level. Why? Because these grades are all learning different things. They all have different levels of difficulty. My 5th grader learns way different things in math than my 3rd grader does. This policy also calls into question, how will kids who are excluded be graded when it comes to test time? Will the teachers remember which kids missed which lessons so they aren't penalized for not knowing that certain information? How are these teachers going to keep track of this? I would personally rather my children cover all the topics, as I want them to know everything that they should know. They have to be competitive with not only kids in this district, but other schools that don't have these same policies, and in other states that have pretty much no policies whatsoever. I also think that giving us the lessons would help the teachers, because when my kids go back, the teachers aren't going to have to sit there and go one-on-one with the kids to help catch them up. The kids will already be at the same point. I think this district needs to change this policy immediately. And as Karen and others have said, I'd like to ask what our district is doing to push back against these mandates. I know other districts, their lawyers are stepping up and pushing back. I'd like to see ours do the same for our children.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, Karen. And lastly, we have Erin Zurich.
Hi. I'm actually here to speak tonight on behalf of Juana Murca. So I'm going to go ahead and read what she wrote. My name is Juana Murca, and I'm a mom of 3 school-age girls and live in District 25. I would like to share my thoughts today from a mom's perspective, but also from an experienced nurse perspective. I've been a nurse for the past 13 years and have worked in different settings with experience in outpatient and inpatient care. I'm also an immigrant from Romania that lived through communism and the Civil War as a child. I am grateful to live in America, and I love this country and the opportunities it offers for us and our children, and that is why I will never take my freedoms for granted here. I decided to write this letter since I'm actually going to be working and regretfully won't be able to attend, but feel that my voice needs to be heard. I will start from a nurse perspective with regards to the mask mandate. Having kids wear cloth masks, trying to instill a sense of security when there are numerous articles out there that state the efficacy of cloth masks is close to none is an outrage. I'm going to quote just one of the articles, but for the lack of time, I encourage all of you to also do your own research. I'll email the link to you guys after so you can read it. But the Journal of Education and Health Promotions at the website shares in a recent study that the result of their research is, as I quote, cloth face masks show minimum efficacy in source control than the medical grade mask. The efficacy of cloth face masks filtration varies and depends on the type of material used, number of layers, and degree of moisture in mask, and fitting of mask on face. So similar to what that other nurse was talking about earlier. Let's remember we are talking about kids here that constantly touch their masks and make them wet by putting them in their mouths. They are far from being medical professionals that know how to put on and remove PPE. What's even more concerning is the fact that these masks become an amazing environment for bacteria to grow and multiply when they are not used properly or changed often. At the hospital, we are seeing an increase in new ENT, ear, nose, and throat, cases of highly infectious bacterias that are highly resistant to different antibiotics due to this exact problem. My son was actually in the hospital for 6 days. Side note. These are effects we are seeing already, but how about long-term effects? How about psychological effects that these masks can cause? I know there's an argument that all kids are resilient, but I have the obligation to tell you that my personal experience and professional experience, they are not as resilient as people think they are. I was born under the communist regime, and one might argue I didn't know better growing up. But as a child, I still had questions of why we could only drive our car on certain days, and why we were not allowed to go to church. A fear of authority was instilled within me to a point where it affected my ability to stand up for my beliefs many times and expressing my opinions for fear of repercussion. I grew up in a society where rarely you get to see a smile on someone's face, or people are afraid to express their emotions. It made me reluctant to trust people. I always had a hard time to see the bright side of things. This is exactly what we are doing to our kids with these mask mandates. And I strongly believe we will see these effects on them long term as well. My question to all of you is, what is your plan? I believe it was voted that the masks are here to stay even after the governor lifts the mandate. I'm asking you as a board to please ask questions and discuss when these masks are coming off. Please ask for local control. It's not acceptable to have absolutely no end date to this mandate and no alternative when our zip code is at 2% right now for positive cases. Why do we feel that the benefits of these masks outweigh the risks, knowing all of this? Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, thank you for everyone that spoke. I don't know if we're obviously out of time. I don't know if we have any that were emailed in, but the board receives those electronically, obviously.
Right, yeah, we do, and we will post those on the website as well.
All right, those will be posted. Thank you, Dr. Bine. All right, moving on to item number 6, the consent agenda. I need a motion.
Mr. President,
Yes, Anisha?
I recommend that the Board of Education approve those items on the consent agenda as follows. A, personnel report and addendum to the personnel report. B, invoices. C, committee of the whole meeting minutes of September 23rd, 2021. D, public hearing on the budget meeting minutes of September 23rd, 2021. E, regular and closed session meeting minutes of September 23rd, 2021. And F, hold closed session minutes of March 18th, 2021 and April 29th through June 30th and April 8th per board policy. And then G, release closed session minutes of January 1st, 2021 through February 25th, 2021 and April 8th, 2021 per board policy listed, and destruction of audio tapes July 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2021 per board policy 2-220E1.
Can I jump in really quick? I'm very sorry. The end year for H, it should be July 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019.
Okay,
I apologize. That was a typo on my
I
part.
wasn't going to say anything else. Yep.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
So
I
noted.
apologize.
That's all right. Thank you for clarifying. Can't very well destroy tapes for meetings that haven't happened yet.
No.
You need to read the whole thing over.
Yeah, just for fun. All right, I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. All right. No call-outs, no questions, so let's go ahead and take the voting. Lana?
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Faso? Yes. Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Lanichak?
Yes.
Member Patel?
All right, thank you. Vote passes, what are we, 6 tonight? 6-0. All righty. Let's move on to communications to and from board members, starting with Gina Faso's report for NSSEO.
So Scott actually attended the meeting yesterday, so I'm going to go from some older notes that I have. They have a parent committee, and the parent committee is currently working on COVID testing, similar to what we are doing with the SHIELD testing. They're also working on some professional learning and some further parent education, and they will be more than willing to share their information as they finish their planning. Their foundation meeting has also occurred, and they have started the 2021-2022 planning with in-person opportunities, so stay tuned for more information on that. And the last element that I have is on October 30th, there is a Halloween event called Harvest Fest. There are 2-hour time blocks that you can sign up for online that will be occurring at the Sunrise Lake Outdoor Education Center in Bartlett. And I would highly encourage anyone who would like to go out there. That is an absolutely beautiful and amazing facility.
All right, well, thank you. On to IASB report from Anisha.
Yes, for the ISB, we're already, can't believe we're getting to November, and the III conference is going to be coming up. And in preparation, our board and all boards are going to be going into looking at the resolutions that are coming up, and you'll see that at your desk. Everybody has the 2021 Resolutions Committee report. So have a look at these resolutions, read through them, and at the next board meeting, we'll kind of discuss as a board what our decisions are to take back to the ISB Resolutions Committee.
Thank you, Anisha. Some additional light reading for all of us. All right, let's move on to EdRed, Stacy and or Rich.
I know I mentioned last time that there was the initial luncheon was last Friday, right? I think it was last Friday. I know, I don't think none of us were unfortunately able to attend, but they did publish out their legislative initiatives, what EdRed is going to be focusing in on, and there's 4 of them. Some are closer to us than others. The first being taking a look at property tax issues and really it hits maybe different areas, but they're talking about the whole restructuring of how the property taxes are looked at, adjudicated, especially between commercial and residential. For large-scale commercial properties, oftentimes they're they go in and they appeal and, you know, get certificates of errors and things of that nature. They're relooking that process to be a little bit more streamlined, more maybe beneficial and not so retroactive, I guess. The second area was professional development mandates. Again, this is more about some of these mandates are coming quickly sometimes, and then relooking at those so that they're more, they're easier to handle, they're easier to process through. Not that they're against them, but just let's be reasonable in looking at all these mandates that come down. The third one is the amendment to the Firearms Restraining Order Act. And in this case, what they're looking at is having school districts having the ability to petition that firearm should be removed from someone's possession. Now that's just a petition, which means they're not making the decision, but police officers have this ability, so to take away your FOID card and things of that nature. I'm not sure, again, this might be something we talk about at some point. It's just an interesting piece there. And then the fourth item is the special education funding structure. Really, there's been a lot of activity about special education. Obviously, it continues to be a great area of discussion and action, but this is just looking at the high cost of special education and how do we better understand that cost and more equally share that cost through other areas. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Rich. Stacy, anything to add? All right. All righty. Let's move on to, this is my section here, the board governance framework. All right. I would draw your attention to, what is this, page 5, board protocols. So the meeting of the board. We understand that the board meetings are meetings of the board held in public, not open forum town hall meetings. We will keep this in mind as we conduct our meetings, allowing the public to provide input at the time allotted on the agenda to ensure the multiple voices of the community inform board deliberations. However, when the board deliberates, it will be a time for board to listen and learn from each other. Taking the public input into consideration, not a time to re-engage with the public. We consistently abide by our formal process related to this issue so that all board persons are treated fairly and equally. We reviewed our policies related to the board meeting management, revisiting or reaffirming them as appropriate. Any input, thoughts, comments? So I chose that tonight because I believe there's a little misunderstanding in the community that if they don't hear certain things being discussed, they must not be being done, right? And I think everybody on this side of that really understands that. So I just felt kind of a good time to kind of remind ourselves of what we do and why we do it. Let's move on to, are there any other board communication? Nope, I don't know why we have that one. All right, communications to board members. PTA, is Nicole here tonight? Yeah.
As Nicole comes up, I'm sure she'll share with the board, but the other night was a regional PTA event where many awards are given out. It was virtual this year, but still amazing to sit in. I'm sure Nicole will share many district school PTAs mentioned and awarded throughout that night, so.
I'm smiling, you just can't see. I'm smiling. All right, so good evening. This week, the Northwest Cook Region PTA held their annual meeting and awards ceremony. Many of our PTA units were honored for their immense commitment and innovation during the 2020-2021 school year. The PTAs within our council received awards in the following categories: Best Adapted Programs, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, New Programs, Special Recognition, Family Literacy, Child Advocacy, Health and Safety, and Membership. As a council, we took home 12 awards. Feeling proud of all we do is an understatement. I commend all the units for their dedication and leadership. Thank you to the volunteers who made all of the plans become a reality. We couldn't have done it without them. We as a PTA look forward to continuing to bring experiences and programs to the children, staff, and families of District 25 throughout this year and beyond. One more note, reflections projects will be due to each school's PTA representative during the first week of November. If you have any questions, please contact your school's representative or check the Illinois PTA website. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. ATA update from Allison Berg. Did I skip? I sure did. I'm sorry, Gina. Man, dissed you. Yes, hold on. Hold that thought.
I'm going to be quick.
I
It's
was
fine.
overzealous on my checking off.
So for ABC 25, it's just a note that we would ask for PTA and ATA to remind the teachers and staff. October 15th is the close for grant submissions, and we're currently excited about looking at the grants that are coming in and being able to help with the fundraising and then funding those grants and giving all that money back to the teachers so that they can do great things and win more PTA awards as a result of being supplemented by what the educators are doing in the areas. In addition, we are also still looking for some volunteers. One specific area of need, if anyone wants to devote their talent, is in that fundraising space. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Now let's hear from ATA, Allison Berg.
Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here today. This is like too tall for me. I'm very short. I'm happy to be here tonight, to represent, to shine a spotlight on the schools. And tonight I am Ivy Hill. So I'm excited to shine the spotlight over at Ivy. The Ivy Hill kindergartners have enjoyed learning about Ivy Hill, and they spent the first month of school meeting their specials teachers, exploring the playground, painting, and reading a variety of books. Ivy Hill first graders have been hard at work this month, and a half of the school building, working hard this first month and a half, try that again, of school, building up their phonics and beginning reading skills, which apparently I need to work on as well. Each week they build, sort, write words related to specific word families, along with diligently practicing good reading habits every day. The confidence and independence within each of these first graders is growing. Second grade Ivy Hill students, mathematicians, have been working so hard to solidify their place value skills, applying their skills to three-digit addition with and without regrouping. Students have learned a variety of math games to play with a partner or a small group, and they're looking forward to their math workshop time every day. At Ivy Hill, the third graders have been exploring how to describe and measure weather, as well as how weather affects them in this unit of study. To dig deeper into severe weather, the students will be starting a research project about a severe weather topic to create their own broadcasts during their library time. And at the end of October, third graders will be meeting with a meteorologist to learn more about the process of creating a weather forecast. Fourth graders have been promoting their reading with a variety of genres while having a little bit of friendly team competition. The fourth graders are getting ready for their very first team book battle. Each group of students is responsible for reading the books on the battle list, and at the end of the month, they'll compete in a trivia reading contest. Fifth graders have been using the Empower Hour to grow as a classroom community while exploring students' interests and goals. They're working on collaborating, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. During this time, students are building, creating, learning, researching, learning a new skill, etc., while working outside their comfort zones. In music, Ivy Hill's musicians are so excited to be making music together, and students in all grades have been practicing developing their musical skills through learning songs and playing a variety of instruments. Fourth graders are excitedly preparing for a November performance where they'll demonstrate what they've been learning in music class this fall, jazz songs and drumming skills. Fifth graders had the opportunity to join choir this year, and they are fantastic singers and have been preparing songs and practicing singing in 2- and 3-part rounds. Third, fourth, and fifth grade Ivy artists are learning to become TAB artists. TAB is short for Teaching Artistic Behavior. A wide variety of media and different techniques and skills will be taught throughout the year, but each student will have autonomy of subject themes in their own art, as well as choose the media to express their ideas. This process encourages true artistry to shine, and we can't wait to see what unique, inspiring art pieces will be created this year. And finally, in LMC, students were presented with the Monarch and Bluestem award books. Students in grades 3 through 5 have been introduced to literary nonfiction as an important genre for research. This introduction started with reading about Mary Walker, the oldest student, who learned to read at age 114, I'm shocked. K through 2 have been using Nearpod in conjunction with Monarch books to become familiar with iPad keyboards, how to switch between letters and numbers, and how to navigate on an iPad. And finally, their LMC display tank has rotating themes to get kids interested in books and upcoming holidays. And their Ivy's Adopt a Book program kicked off and has raised a generous sum of money to purchase books for their LMC. So lots of awesome things happening at Ivy Hill, and I shout out to those teachers for providing me with all these wonderful things to share with you tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Student Learning No Report this month, week, whatever here. Student Services, we have a Special Education, Local Education, Agency Determination presentation from Peg. Hi.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to discuss District 25's annual LEA determination with you this evening. To give you a little background, the Illinois State Board of Education has completed its Illinois Special Education Support and Accountability findings to determine if a local education agency or LEA requires tiered monitoring and support by identifying potential risks. This is completed annually for all school districts in the state. IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Act, requires this as to ensure that school districts are providing appropriate special education. Awesome. Yeah. I will survive. No, I'm kidding. ISBE has determined that District 25 meets the requirements and can voluntarily use the Tier 1 support provided by the state. So this next slide is the matrix provided to District 25 by ISBE for the 2021 school year, which represents the December 1st child count, as well as if the district has met the state targets. School districts can score a 3, 2, 1, or 0 on each indicator. A score of 3 simply means the LEA is meeting or exceeding the state's target. A score of 2, the LEA is below the state target and has improved from the previous year with more than 1% growth. A score of 1, the LEA is below the state's target and has remained constant from the previous year. And a score of 0, the LEA is below the state target and has declined from the previous year with a slippage of more than 1%. The indicators for success, the first one here is 6A, early childhood outcome. That measures the percent of students ages 3 to 5 that receive the majority of special education services in a regular education early childhood program. Indicator 12 is IDEA transition outcomes, where all students that are eligible for special education have developed and implemented an IEP by their 3rd birthday. Other indicators, other outcomes, indicator 5A measures the percent of students ages 6 through 21 served inside the regular education classroom for 80% or more in the least restrictive environment. Indicator 4B, suspension and expulsion. We had no discrepancy by race or ethnicity in the rate of suspensions or expulsions. Indicator 9, disproportionality IEPs. We have no disproportionate representation of racial or ethnic groups in special education. Indicator 10, disproportionality with a specific disability. We have no disproportionate representation in specific disability categories. Indicator 11, child find, that all evaluations are completed within 60-day timeline as mandated. Timely correction of noncompliance, we've had no findings of noncompliance. Fiscal risk, we follow all the IDEA federal guidelines, so we get no single audit findings. So we scored a maximum of 3 and met in all areas but 1 with an overall performance of 88.89, which I say is a high B+, with which meets requirements, which ISBE says that we can voluntarily use their support. Indicator 6E, or excuse me, 6A, early childhood service delivery settings. This measures the percentage of children with individualized education plans aged 3, 4, and 5 who are enrolled in a preschool program and who are attending a regular education program and receiving the majority of special education and related services in the regular early childhood program. Our data indicates that our early childhood program did not meet ISBE's expectations for the 2020 school year on indicator 6A. We have always been a leader in the state of Illinois for early childhood integration, and District 25 has been a model program for area districts. Diane Kafka, our early childhood coordinator, has met with Christina Doan, the ISBE principal consultant for early childhood, to review our data and reflect on the sudden change to determine if there's a need for a plan of remedy for us. The data for indicator 6A is a point-in-time data collection that occurred on December 1st, 2020, which was during the pandemic. The early childhood program, our early childhood program, offered both in-person and remote classes starting on September 1st of 2020. In order to safely open our in-person classes, we needed to limit the number of students to ensure we could follow the 6-foot guidance with preschool-age children. We decreased our tuition-paying spots, which are typically 10 to 7 students. And we garnered variance approval from ISBE. So we wrote deviations and were approved by ISBE for this decrease. We also followed a strict cohort model to avoid mixed exposure between classes, which limited our ability to integrate students on a daily basis. Fortunately, we were able to keep all students learning in person throughout the 2021 school year with no classroom closures. A few other factors that influenced our data was that 20 families that chose to unroll their preschool children due to health and safety concerns, or because the requirements of other daycare facilities would not allow those students to be enrolled in outside programs other than their daycare facility. Therefore, they did not enroll in our program because they were going to daycares elsewhere. We did note an increase at that time in parents taking advantage of our itinerant speech therapy groups versus enrolling them in our preschool program. These factors all resulted in our ability to maintain in-person learning during the pandemic, but decreased our integration of students, which resulted in the percentage slippage for indicator 6A. Based on a review of our projected data for 21-22 school year, we will, without a doubt, meet the ISBE indicator 6A expectations and Christina Doan, ISBE Principal Consultant for ISBE with Early Childhood, noted that we do not need to be on a remediation plan. So in summary, as I said just before, a high B+, 88.89%. It's a good report. LEA determination summary that we have met the requirements with a 24 out of 27. I'm happy about it. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Peg. Any comments or questions? Anisha?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much for that detailed report and going over the numbers with us. And of course, it was a COVID year, so things were a little bit different, like you said, and I'm glad that we don't have to be on a remedy plan. But as you noted, right, we're at a B+, and, you know, so I'd like to say, you know, we need to continue improving in our special education area, it seems like, and I know that you're already doing this. I know that the team is continuing to work on this, so I'd like to applaud you for everything that you're doing and to say to continue to work on improving this in the special education area.
All right, any others?
I just have one question. I mean, I know obviously the one that we had the 0 on, right, indicated that last year because of all those situations. I'm assuming this year, because of the changes, are we still seeing that as a potential issue for next year for the early, for the what was that, the 6A childhood? Yeah, no. I mean, just because obviously that could be an impact for next year as well, too, just thinking through the process. I just want to understand that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, we will return to, we expect a level 3 in that area.
All right. Mr. President. Oh, Rich.
Since we're on the topic of 6A, can you just, I know you read it and I've read what the measures actually, but I still don't understand it. You measure the percentage of children with IEPs who are enrolled in a preschool. So is the fact that we got a 0 that we had folks that are IEPs that weren't enrolled in our program? Is that simple, or is?
It's actually the opposite. We had more students that had special needs enrolled in our program over students without special needs. So we usually have more students, 10 students we take that are tuition paid students integrated with children with IEPs. That's considered a regular education classroom because it's a 70-30 percentage, 70% general ed, 30% special ed. We had to decrease that 70% and we wrote deviations to the state. You have to get ISBE approval to be able to implement without the 70-30. We did for 3 of our classrooms, we wrote deviations and we were approved, and then ironically we didn't meet 6A.
So thinking about it maybe in a different light, we actually did what was best for the children that most needed it.
Correct.
And yet we got
Correct.
dinged on it by a math score.
Correct.
Okay.
So I have no issue that we will be, you know, our ultimate goal is 100% and get an A++ on this. And so it's how,
once again
how things work.
Yeah.
Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead.
So just a question about indicator 5A. So you shared that the state's requirement dropped from 58% to 52.7.
Correct.
And that we now meet it. So is there any indication from the state, like is that a result, like they're accommodating for the pandemic, or is that a long-term change? Any indication?
Thank you, Greg. I participated in a focus group, and ISBE had been looking at this data over the course of several years because several districts within the state were not meeting that indicator 5A because they had the percentage at 58%, where several districts couldn't meet it. So they looked at some trend data and conducted this focus group with several assistant superintendents or directors of special ed, met with, through NSSEO, Dr. Judy Hackett started that, and looking at the data, the average of where districts were 52.6%, and so we have met. I was proud that we didn't decrease given the pandemic, our percentage, but it still is something that we want to increase the percentage as we increase our inclusive practices in District 25.
Yeah, thank you. And so then I'm going to follow up with a question to that. So in high level terms, I'm not asking for a specific plan, but what does that mean to increase that number for your department, for us as a school district?
That means that we need to continue to look at our coding, making sure that we are coding correctly on IEPs, which are reported to the state. And that means that we need to continue to take a look at how we can get students receiving special education placed more within the general education setting. And we see the big shift from elementary into the middle schools because of the scheduling issue at the middle schools. The coding just kind of changes a little bit because the supports that needed once kids move into the middle schools.
And, thank you. And one last question. You mentioned that we could, and correct me if I have the terminology or words wrong, voluntarily use ISBE support. So when you say that support, is that remedial support, or can it be used for advancing programs? Or
it's typically remedial support.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Greg, and thank you, Peg. Let's move on to business and finance. Stacy Malik. Oh, this is an action item. Is it not?
Yeah, it is.
Yes. Almost anytime she speaks, it's an action item.
Mr. President, it's an action item, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, Anisha?
I recommend that the Board of Education approve the resolution for the continuation of various insurance coverages for the 2022 calendar year.
All right, thank you. Anisha, do I have a second?
Second.
Is that Greg? Yes. All righty, thank you, Anisha, thank you, Greg. Stacy?
Thank you. So this is a time of year when our insurance committee that includes representatives from our ATA, our SEIU, and other staffing groups in the district, as well as our board member Conley, myself, Brian Kay, meet with our insurance broker to go over the projected benefits renewal for the calendar year 2020 at this point coming up. So we had two meetings. We had the initial meeting and then a follow-up meeting to go over just some questions that everyone had and in order to make some decisions on the plans. The good news is on our blended, what we call our blended plans, our regular PPO plan and our regular HMO plan, our proposed renewal increase was 3%. The important factors in that is that the board has a negotiated 6% cap with our Teachers Association. So the board would pick up a maximum of a 6% increase. However, there's also language that requires that employees pay a minimum of 3% of the single premium and 33% of the family premium. So when the renewal comes in under that 6%, that renewal amount typically becomes the actual board's increase cost to make sure that the employees continue to pay that 3% and 33%. So the board's cost for those two regular plans, the increase will be 3%, whereas our budget always anticipates up to the 6%. The insurance committee is recommending that the regular HMO plan move to a self-funded arrangement similar to our PPO plan. We have discussed over the past 3 years moving from a fully funded HMO to a self-funded HMO so that we save on the kind of administrative side of costs on that plan. And our broker has showed us each year that there's cost savings to that, and at this point, we expect that our cost savings could be anywhere from 0.2% worst case up to 2.7% by self-funding the HMO. So we've decided to make that recommendation. The renewal increase is consistent with trend. We are seeing Pharmacy continues to run high on our plans, as it does with a lot of plans. Our current calendar year claims through August are running at a deficit over what we budgeted. They're 17% higher than the prior two fiscal years at this point of the year. I'm sorry, prior to calendar years at this point through the year. We expect that's because our renewals are based on 24 months prior data, and so that would include calendar year, or all of calendar year 2020, which was a COVID year when things were shut down. A lot of services, medical services, were being delayed or put off. So that was actually a really good year for us where we came in under budget. However, I think people are catching up with that now. We're seeing, again, this year is trending very poorly. So we anticipate that next year won't be a super great year either. So we anticipate that going forward to our 2023 renewal, we would be seeing a maybe larger increase than we would hope to see. So based on that, we talked about making some changes now to some of our pharmacy plan to try to get some savings in the drug costs and the pharmacy plan to kind of in advance of that 2020 renewal to help minimize that to the extent that we can. So those include moving from a basic drug list to a balanced drug list, adding a couple coupon programs that don't affect the employee. The employee pays $0, but it benefits what the plan then pays. And adding a 90-day My Way program required for maintenance drugs. So we have an option right now for employees to get 90 days of prescriptions for a 2-month copay, but we don't require it. And so for maintenance type of drugs where people are supposed to take those every day for long, I guess infinitum, probably, unless the risk that if you're filling your prescription every 30 days and you get to that 30th day and you're busy and you're like, oh, I didn't refill it today, and 3 days or 4 days go by, you're actually missing that drug for 4 days. And if that happens every 3 months, that's actually not good for your health and doesn't provide that kind of steady flow of benefiting the employee, whereas moving them to the 90-day means they get 90 days at a time. So if after 90 days they forget to refill it and miss 3 or 4 days, they're only going to happen 4 times a year instead of 12 times a year. So overall better for the employee. And overall, all of these things are intended to bring additional cost savings to our plan overall, again, supported by the committee and by our Teachers Association. Ultimately, all of our employee groups do follow the teacher's contract when it comes to insurance, so we look to our Teachers Association to be sure they support any recommendations we bring forward. We have 2 additional health plans, standalone plans. One is a high deductible PPO with an HSA, and that renewal is 3% for next year. And then we have a standalone Blue Advantage HMO, which is a much smaller, or it's a smaller network, therefore a lower cost plan than our regular HMO, and that premium increase is 0.7% for next year. In terms of our vision insurance, we're on a 3-year rate guarantee with our current VSP plan, so we continue on that with unchanged premiums through this year. Our flexible spending plan is a voluntary employee plan where they can contribute funds to an account to pay out-of-pocket medical costs up to the level that they're funding that plan. Dental insurance we have through Delta Dental. The increase for that plan this year is on the PPO plan is 17%, and the DHMO is 5%. So the board does pay the cost of the single dental PPO. So that'll be $42 per pay instead of $36 per pay. And then again, life insurance is under a 3-year rate guarantee, so that one's not up for renewal at this time. You have in the board packet the difference in the rates between the 2 years in terms of the employee cost and the board cost. Also the proposed rates for next year.
All right, any benefits, comments, or questions? I was thinking
No, I
Greg,
think-
you know, that the teacher from another district might have a couple. I was just, you know, speculating.
No,
Rich?
I think it's important to understand, like,
Oh, I
this
thought you-
movement of the drugs is important, and using a maximizer program. What it will do is reduce our costs, and it actually moves the cost to the manufacturer, so to speak, right? So the manufacturer puts a copay card that you bill your insurance, you know, the idea is then you push it to the maximizer, it reduces the cost, and it's also, the intention is to reduce the cost to the employee too. So this is a very common thing within the trades that are happening today. But I think it's good that we're moving to that, because it will help reduce our costs as a district.
Thanks, Jeff. Now, Rich.
I did have a question. So related to the experience, because you said our experience was lower due to COVID, is that because they excluded a bunch of our experience, or because it was COVID related, or because of COVID we just had a lower experience?
I think the second one. So for 2020, starting March of 2020, when things kind of shut down, doctors' offices, people were putting off procedures. Our claims just got very low. So when you're self-funded, your renewal is based on your claims. Claims for all of 2020 came in under budget because people weren't getting maybe non-urgent procedures done that they typically would have. However, as things have opened up, we are seeing that in 2021, maybe, I can't say for sure, but our claims are running high. They're running over budget right now. And we did anticipate we'd see some backup claims, like some non-urgent procedures that employees put off last year would happen this year. We don't know to what extent that's occurring. But all of calendar year 2020 was very low claim in comparison to a typical year.
And then since we're self-funded, do we have like a corridor plan on top of it so that it limits our upper end exposure?
Yeah, 130%.
Okay. And then finally, with the HSA, because I know you mentioned it, is the HSA only if you're on that one plan, or is the HSA across all plans? You can either do the FSA or you can do the HSA.
No, I think that's a federal tax rule that an HSA is only allowed when you have a high deductible plan, so that's all it's available with.
All right, well, thank you. Yep, we need a vote. Anna?
Member Faso?
Yes.
Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Olenichuk?
Yes.
Member Patel?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes. All right, vote passes 6-0. Let's move on to the resolution for waiver of limitation of administrative cost cap. That's a mouthful.
Mr. President,
Yes, Anisha.
I recommend that the Board of Education approve the resolution for waiver or modification of Illinois School Code 105 ILCS 517-1.5 for limitation on administrative costs for school year 2021-2022.
Thank you, Anisha. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Chad. All right, Stacy. Walk us through this.
For the first time in my 27th year in school districts, I have never had to talk with the board about an administrative waiver, a waiver of administrative costs. So it was a first for me as well. So basically, school code indicates that between last year's actual costs and the current year's budgeted costs for only certain pieces of our budget, certain administrative functions, so Lori's office, my office, special ed, and then internal services, which is basically just our copy machine contract for all of the schools, if this year's budget is more than 5% of last year's actual costs, that exceeds the cost cap. The cap is 5%. So if you look at those budgets, what we budgeted last year and what we're budgeting this year, the total increase between budgets is 3.5%. And it's important to note that those accounts include salaries. It includes benefits. So if you think about a 3% benefit increase, or it reflects that, as well as any contracts or that come out of those function codes or professional development. Because last year, so this is 2020, 2021, we didn't do any professional development like going to conferences, so none of those budget dollars got spent. So there was something like 38,000 budgeted, but we only spent 9,000. This year it's 38,000. It's exact same budget, but everything was Zoom or didn't happen last year. The copy contract is $60,000 to $70,000. Well, we didn't do a lot of paper and printing at the schools last year, so we spent $22,000. But I expect this year we're going to spend 60 or 70. So it looks like a big increase, but it's only because of COVID last year that our actual expenditures were really significantly understated than they would be in a typical year. And then the other big piece that affected it is, if you'll recall, we did the assistant principal position at Westgate School. We used to just code as assistant principal. For this year, because of staffing changes, we made it consistent with the other schools that have our special ed instructional programs in them, where the assistant principal is basically a half-time assistant principal and a half-time special ed coordinator, because then we fill it with somebody who has both those expertises. But now that salary that last year was fully charged to the principal's office, this year is half charged to the principal's office, half charged to special ed. So it's not that we increased the administrative costs, we just reclassified it between principal's office and special ed. But because it's law and it's what the school code requires, I have to ask the board to approve a resolution to get a waiver based on that exact information. And then I have to, we posted the information on our website 14 days ago. We posted a notice in the newspaper 7 days ago to have the hearing tonight. I had to send notice to our local legislators with the application, with the detail that I gave you, saying, hey, look, this is what we're doing. So lots of steps involved. And ultimately, then I need to send all this information to the state so that when we get to the end of this year and get audited and our actual costs are going to be higher than last year. Because for your budget, it's this, but then for your audit, they look at it again, that we won't get Nick's hit on our audit at the end of 21, 22.
Change, yep. Okay. That explains why we never saw it before, and kind of explains why they have it, and when you think about it, right, if you're all of a sudden blowing your budget.
Well, the intent is good. The intent is to make sure you don't just bump certain administrative costs 10% every year.
Right. Yep.
So.
Makes sense. Any comments or questions? Manisha?
And Ms. Malka, I just wanted to say, I know your office has been extremely busy lately with many, many different requests. And thanks for taking all the steps here to make sure that we'll continue to be extremely, we get the highest excellent ratings for when the audits come out for our financial rankings. So thank you for taking all these extra steps to make that happen.
Thanks.
All right. Let's let Stacy off the hook, and let's get Brian up for some personnel and planning updates. Oh my God, we got to vote. Yes, I forgot. On this thing that we never saw before. Yeah.
Member Conley?
Yes.
Member Scapalato?
Yes.
Member Oliniechek?
Yes.
Member Patel?
Yes.
Member Cherniglia?
Yes.
Member Faso?
Yes.
All right, now you're off the hook. On to personnel and planning. Dr. Brian Kay.
Good evening, everyone. No items to vote on, just a brief update on staffing that will focus on the work that's been done over the past month and revealing our current unfilled positions. All right. So tonight I will review FTE per employee group, FTE by building, focusing only on the unfilled positions. Thank you. So this slide shows representation of what you saw last month as well, the FTE by the different employee groups. On the left-hand column, the admin, the ATA, the ESP, food service, one interpreter, the other support group, the SEIU, and the TCARN. So this is no change from the last meeting we saw. And then the FTE building comparison, this one shows the number of unfilled positions that we have throughout the district. And what I like about this one is it shows per building, including here, the Dunton Administration Building, and then by group, how many positions are unfilled. In the very bottom 2 rows, we have the enrollment that was the 6-day enrollment for this school year for each school. And then you can see the grand total of unfilled positions. Looks like 23.54 from all the way back here, when you include all of the positions that are currently posted that we're looking to fill. On slide 5, this is the first one where I start to break down each group. There's a chart on the left and then a bar chart on the right, and I would anticipate updating this if you find it useful each board meeting or every other board meeting. The blue is a really good color on the bar chart. Those are the filled positions. And then at the very top, if there's a little red, that is the unfilled. So with our admin group, you currently see a 0. From the last meeting, we had a 0.5, and you might remember we hired a part-time AP at Dryden and introduced Kara at the last meeting, and she was the last admin position we had to fill for this school year. So that's a celebration. On slide 6, we have the ATA group. It might be easier to look on the left-hand side, the chart, to show from September to October. Our unfilled went from just under 1 to 3.93, so an increase of 3. Obviously not the direction we want to go, but we had 1 retirement, we had 1 resignation, and 1 leave of absence. So we have actively worked to fill those positions since the last meeting. But yeah, I think it's easier to see because the red looks really small at the top of that chart on the right. But we had 3 positions open up from the last meeting. On page 7, the staffing chart for the ESP group, we still have a 1.0 opening from the last meeting until this one, and we are currently actively pursuing someone. The offer is out there. We're waiting for that person to hopefully accept the final offer. So we're very active and excited about getting that group down to a 0 unfilled as well. Page 8, food service. We have currently just over 5 FTE positions that need to be filled. It doesn't show how many different positions because in food service we have a lot of smaller part-time positions. But in overall, when you add them all up, we have a 5.0. So it's not like we need 5 people. It's actually more than that. But they're part-time positions that are difficult to fill because they're so small in the middle of the day. So we continue to actively look for quality people in the area that are interested in working for small chunks of time. Page 9, the staffing chart for the other support personnel, another celebration. Those are also currently filled. So 2 months in a row of currently fully filled in the OSP group. And I know that can be a rather odd title, the other support personnel, but there are positions that are specialized. For example, Lana would be in that group, our communications director is in that group, payroll is in that group, our technology facilitators are in that group. So there's a variety of specialized positions that are part of that group. That is just like the melting pot of specialties. So I know it doesn't really identify other support personnel as like a full group, but to know that's fully filled feels really good. The next chart on page 10, the staffing chart for the SEIU. We had and continue to have just under 3.0 FTE positions to fill. One of the ones that we are actively seeking to fill is the floating custodian position for our second shift. And that position is exciting for us because we often will have absences, and the purpose of that floating position is to help train someone to be like a sub that can go anywhere throughout the district at any time, and they're like a full employee. They come to work, and then we just give them guidance on where to go that afternoon. So that one was filled, but another position opened, and that person applied and was given that position, which left this one open. So that one, we have generally found that one to be not easy, but we've filled that one. So we expect that one to be filled, but right now we're not seeing a lot of candidates applying for that position. But when they apply, we are actively bringing them in to interview. And I believe the last group that I wanted to share with you is the staffing chart for the TCARN, the teaching assistants, the registered nurses, and the clerical assistants. As I've talked to this group before, we have a lot of personnel in this group. You can see we have over 130 members, and we are struggling to fill all of those TA positions at the building level. We will often find we're hiring a couple and then a couple leave, and for a variety of reasons, not to find better work, but for health reasons, for their moving, a variety of reasons why people might leave, but we continue to chip away and then some open up. So we still are actively looking for a lot of teaching assistants as well, almost in every category. So we have elementary, we have middle school, and they pay well, and they have great benefits. So if you're listening out there, we have great options for you. A couple more slides. Last month, I shared with you the certified positions on the left, and on the right is just my update for you. So if it's crossed out, that's a good sign. That means we've hired them. And then you can see one is still in black on the right side, the Director of Food Services. We do know that Coletta Hines-Newell will be retiring in February, so we are actively interviewing candidates for that position. So while it's still open, that's not a bad thing. We are actively interviewing and hope at the next board meeting we will have a recommendation for you. And then in February, we're going to celebrate Coletta's retirement. And then the three that were added on the bottom, if you could go back, yep, the three in blue are additions that were not there on the left-hand side. So the quarantine teacher at the middle school is now open because that person took another job that was vacated. The math interventionist, that is open because of a staff member that chose a different kind of leave. And then the last one, the EL teacher at the middle school. So those are three positions we are actively trying to search for candidates. And then the last slide is the unfilled positions for the non-certified. Again, I feel like it's always good to have some crossed out on the right, which means those are the positions we filled. But we have quite a number of positions still yet to be added. The blue one that was added at the bottom is the administrative assistant for the Department of Student Learning. And again, I feel like we are close to closing that one very soon. So we'll continue to chip away at the other non-certified positions that are currently available. All right, that ultimately wraps it up. Just in closing, I want to say thank you again for all of the administrators for not only screening the candidates, but facilitating interview teams to ensure we hire the best talent available to support our mission, together today to transform tomorrow. So thank you, board, for letting us share a little bit about the updates from last month, but specifically focusing on the unfilled positions in this update. Are there any questions?
Rich?
Brian, just a quick question. So we've then filled, last year or time period, we added the 9. So we've now filled those, except it might be that one quarantine is how you're counting those 9?
Yeah, when you say the 9, so like the intervention positions and the quarantine positions.
No, I'm sorry, the additional subs, or how are we counting those? Where we said we wanted to add additional substitutes?
I think I know what you're talking about. I don't know if we ever followed through and hired what you're mentioning. So one of the ideas to help the guest teacher challenge was to hire one extended assignment sub at each building. I think as last year we were going through different pivot points, it was an idea we were sharing, but never actually hired all of those extended assignment subs. So they are definitely not reflected on this list. To that point, we did hire 2 to support the quarantine teachers.
I just wasn't sure if they were in the same category, if they were separate categories.
Great question. I would say they're in the same category, but that's the only group we targeted to make sure there were trained subs when the quarantine teachers needed to be out. Because I don't think a sub without training would be able to jump into sub for a quarantine teacher.
A quick question, Dr.
Yes,
K.
Alicia.
You know, you had talked about the teaching assistants positions that you need to fill. So for anybody who's listening out there, what are the qualifications necessary for that position?
Well, you have to first start with a positive attitude. Someone that has college credit. You don't need a college degree, but there's a certain number of college hours you need to have. Or you can take a test that is online. If you pass the test, then you are qualified to be a parapro. So there are a variety of avenues that ISBE has allowed for people to get certified to be a teaching assistant. So any college graduate, hands down, is certified and qualified to do it. If you don't have that, then you can take a test to become a parapro. And if anyone is interested, I can help guide you to that path to help get you there. And if you don't want to do that, we can also offer you guest teacher options. So I think some of the reasons our guest teachers don't want to take a teaching assistant position, because they're all great and qualified to do it, it now forces you to work every single day in one building, whereas some like the variety and the flexibility of not having to work every day. So we do try to push our guest teachers into taking these jobs, but they like their flexibility as well. Great question. For the food service, yeah, we have a variety of small chunks of time, and yes, many of them are in the middle of the day. Some are also for the middle school for food prep in the beginning of the day, but most of them are during the delivery time in the middle of the day. So if you're interested in Nisha, let me know. Yeah, I would love to talk to her.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, on to the superintendent report. Dr. Lori Bine.
Do you have the? I do. Thank you.
Could I do one more update? As Lori's going back to her desk. So in the personnel report, you may have noticed there was an employee by the name of Suzanne Grimm. Last Monday, sadly, she passed away, and I've known Sue since, I think, 2005. When I was at Windsor Elementary School as the principal, Sue was my first food service director and was nothing but the most positive person I've ever come in contact with, always asking if I was interested in the leftover food. She won me over quickly. And Sue, in 2008, was given the manager position in a neighboring school district, but through us. So we support River Trails, and she accepted the position to be a manager. So we didn't have as much interaction within District 25 with Sue, but those in the food service department had a lot of interaction with Sue. And with her passing, it's the first time as an HR person I've had to put that on a personnel report. Not something I enjoyed doing, but I wanted to take this moment while talking about staffing. It's all about relationships and people, to just say thank you to Sue and all of her dedicated service, and we will obviously certainly miss her. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. All right, superintendent report.
Thank you. The 21-22 school year is moving forward quickly. And though we had, I think, all originally hoped we'd be moving forward without much pandemic impact, we quickly learned that the pandemic still requires us to be flexible. Guidelines from the State Board of Education and the Department of Public Health are updated often, and we are continuing to adapt as quickly as we can, while also balancing the need of our students to experience some consistency and to have some increased opportunity to socialize with their peers. So we're trying to balance, again, making some changes without those changes being so frequent that it disrupts our kids reconnecting. Today, I'll just do a quick update for the board on some of the areas we've had to modify throughout the first couple of months of school. Those, thank you, include, I'll give you a little bit of an update on our dashboard, how SHIELD testing is going, the Academy program, lunch, and talk about some celebrations as well, as there is a lot to celebrate as our students and teachers bring their positive energy into our classroom. Whoops, sorry about that. I'm doing it? Got it. Thank you. So this is a screenshot of a half of our dashboard, and I'll show you the other half in a moment. We are updating the dashboard every Monday this year. We found it important, knowing that it takes a bit to get our daily information entered into the system that we're using, and that information this year changes almost daily, more than it did last year, because there are so many reasons that somebody can come back from exclusion and so many different options, right? Last year it was 14 days. That was it, right? 10 days if you're positive, 14 days if you're a close contact. Now you have a 7-day, a 10-day, a 14-day, a test to stay. We also have alternate diagnoses, so someone who might go home with symptoms but back is later that day with an alternate diagnosis from a doctor, and some other variations that what we could say are the numbers at 9 a.m. might be different by 2 p.m. So we're giving our, like we did last year, a weekly view, but instead of reporting, I think we were doing Friday to Thursday last time, we're just reporting on the Monday through Friday week. So this is an example of what was posted for the week of September 26th through October 2nd. And the dashboard shows positive cases for students and positive cases for staff by building. So you see exactly how many were identified in that week. And then the line graph below is actually very important to understand, because this shows the trend over time. So while the blue bars above just show that week, the line graph shows you back from the first week of school and all the way through. The other important thing about the line graph, we might find out this week that there's a case by health department guidelines has to be reported back in last week. We might not find out about it till now, but based on when symptoms started or when testing happened or other various reasons, it actually doesn't get recorded in this week. It goes back and gets recorded in the week before. So that will show on that line graph. So for example, if you look at right now on that line graph, it says that on October 2nd for that week, we had 15 positive student cases. When you see this line graph next week, that 15 might have gone to 18. Right? We might find out now that there's some cases that we have to formally report with last week. So the blue bars with the numbers on top just show that one specific week. But that line graph continues to change as information becomes available. So that's an important one to watch as it will change. And again, it does show you the students in the darker blue and the staff in the lighter blue for positive cases. The other half of that dashboard that we've started using now is reporting on SHIELD testing. So for the week of September 18th to the 25th, it shows how many students were tested at each school. And then below in the lighter color, how many positives were identified through SHIELD testing. So these are cases, exactly what SHIELD is meant to do, of asymptomatic students. So they did not have any symptoms in any way, but SHIELD testing identified that they actually were positive for COVID. We are really pleased that we are getting results very quickly, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So again, as we continue with SHIELD testing, at the bottom there'll be a line graph that will be added on that shows the number of positives that are identified through SHIELD testing. More about SHIELD testing. As of today, we actually have now over 1,600 students enrolled. So when I put this slide together late last week, it was at 1,500, so we've added now 100 more students whose families have enrolled them. We're finishing our second week in SHIELD testing, and it really is going very smoothly. But that really is thanks to many parent volunteers who've come over to help us. I have to give some shout outs to our district administrators who've been over helping test, organizing students, entering data to make sure that the impact on kids being out of the classroom and the impact on teachers is as small as possible. And our students really have been fantastic. So last week, again, our district administrators were at SHIELD testing every day. This week, we've stepped back and we've split it up. So I was there one day, Stacy's there one day, Brian's there, Peg's one day, Adam's been helping out, Becky. And so we've been pleased that we've been able to pull back on our time at SHIELD testing. We've seen an increase in the number of workers. Last week there was maybe 2 or 3 workers that came from SHIELD or MedCall. We're at between 5 and 7 now. So that increase in staffing on their part, and all of us helping, as well as our building administrators helping getting a routine down, is allowing us to pull back. SHIELD testing, I would say, is challenging for the majority of our early childhood students. And I would say probably the majority of them last week were not able to do the saliva test that would get results. And for some of our kindergarten students, although most of them were able to do it fairly easily. So Greenbrier is working with our EC families, seeing how EC goes this week, and working with families to practice with kids or to determine if those early childhood kids with special needs will continue in the program or not. Last week, in the first week, we kind of watched timing at each of our schools. Once students were in the testing room, and really, when I say testing room, it sounds so medical. We're really using kind of our commons or a large space in each school set up for this process. Our middle schoolers were in and out of the room pretty much about 2 minutes each. Again, a few kids would take longer, but pretty much 2 minutes, mostly across the board. Our elementary kids, we timed, they were in with us probably 5 to 8 minutes the vast majority of the time. Then there's, of course, the time for them to leave class to get there and from leave us to go back to them. But for our first week, last week, I was extremely pleased with that. We have many neighboring districts who have had significant struggles in their first few weeks of SHIELD testing. I have to say that our administrators, especially Stacy and Brian, really had a backup for every possibility that could happen. So there were times in the first week where MedCall's computers weren't working. It was seconds, and we had our computers. They'd already had them. Stacy and Brian had already made sure principals had extra computers just in case. We had them replaced in seconds. And a variety of situations that they just really predicted if something were to go wrong, how do we make sure we limit that impact? And that worked great for us. So a lot of effort going into that has made it run very smoothly. We are seeing, like I said, our results pretty much in less than 24 hours, as they had said we would. That's been great. That's actually, I was a little worried, right? Will that really happen? Will that turn around? It is happening consistently, often in the same day. We're getting results. So that is why, sometimes we'll get results that evening, and that's why in the evenings, principals might be reaching out to families saying, oh, we have a positive case, because they're reaching out as soon as they get that information. So our academy program, I listed here the different groupings, and then I put information where I was having some concerns about class size in the academy program. So our early childhood, no concern about class size. We have individual single digits of students, less than 5. In fact, I think so far it's been like 1 or 2 who are actually in the academy program with a teacher in early childhood. Kindergarten through 2nd grade, that grouping, that multi-grade group, there's been 2 days where there's been 20 students in the academy program. Again, 20 is a typical class size for us at kindergarten through 2nd, but it's just one that I watched, right? When you consider multiple grades, K1 and 2, there's been 2 days that have had 20 students. 3rd through 5th grade, there have been 2 days where there were between 24 or 34 students, and 2 days where there were over 40 students in that grouping. But the teachers have been able to break them down into smaller class sizes. So what they decided to do would be easiest for kids is the kids still log into the same link and they greet their teacher, but then we have a second teacher, so maybe the teacher who is our academy teacher for special education but doesn't have any special education students during that day. They're then splitting the students between those 2 teachers, but rather we didn't want to confuse kids and be like, okay, half of you now are going to go on this link and half are going to go on that link. So they all went to the same link. The teacher greeted them. The second teacher joined in. They maybe did some beginning of the day things, and then they split into their 2 groups. And for some of the subjects, they maybe rejoined, had some common explanation, and then again did kind of breakout groups so they could have smaller class sizes. And then 6th through 8th grade, again, it's been single or in the 10, 12 students at a time. So we're continuing to watch our academy program. We lots of professional development happening with those teachers. As Dr. Kay mentioned, our middle school academy teacher, we hired for another position in the district. So now we're looking to fill that. We do have someone in there currently, but we're still making sure that's a long-term position. So that's where we are on that. And lunch is forever changing throughout the state of Illinois during the pandemic. So as we started the year, you know that the health department's guidance was that 3 feet distance to the greatest extent possible is required. That is still the health department guidance for lunch, but there's a difference here. So the guidance is still schools should maintain 3 feet distance to the greatest extent possible. But they added a change for when they determine close contacts. So close contacts are now measured by 6 feet when masks are removed, so at lunch. In a classroom, close contacts are still 3 feet because we're masked. But anytime you're unmasked now, they use a measurement of 6 feet. So for us, again, that's lunchtime. So if you're within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more without a mask and someone is positive, you are, through contact tracing, determined to be a close contact. And I think the board, I know you're aware, last week or a week and a half ago, I'm losing track of time, we also had to update our families of another updated guidance in that test to stay, which originally we do have in writing could be used even during lunch. got changed, and now we have in writing that test to stay cannot be used if exposure happens when someone's not wearing a mask, so lunch. So our schools are making some modifications. Some changed their procedures already. Some are changing this week. Some have information going out to families, even on next Monday, that they'll be trying some different things next week. And here's the general things that are occurring. As you know, our middle schools are outside wherever possible. At the same point, there's been some struggles with that, probably more bee stings than we've ever seen since I've been here. We are cleaning our outside grounds as fast as we can, but we have some people walking their pets in between when we're out there and our kids go out for lunch. So we've had some issues with that. But we are still going outside as much as we can. And we're also now going to try to do our best to go to 6 feet. It's not easy, but our principals are doing all they can. And I know some of our families are not happy that we're moving to 6 feet because lunch is a great time for kids to socialize, and now they have to be further apart or possibly even split, where part of a class is in the classroom and part of a class is in the lunchroom. So we are moving to utilizing more spaces so that we can have 6 feet apart. And in some situations, we've realized we might have a 20-minute time in the lunchroom, and by the time the kids get their lunch, sit down, take off their mask, and when they're done and put it back on, they're under 15 minutes exposed. So that works out at those schools. So some of the other schools are going to try to change. They're going to pilot some experiences where maybe the kids are eating for 20 minutes and then they're going outside more, or they're putting their masks on and going to a classroom where they can socialize during that time and be 3 feet apart, but with their masks on. So each school is trying a little bit different things with the goal of reducing our close contacts, right? Because this is where the vast majority, when we do have close contacts, the vast majority are happening at lunch. And we can't use test to stay now, where originally we had planned to be able to do that. So that's where we're sending more kids home than we like. So we're going to try and mitigate that. Each principal is communicating out to their families what they're doing. And we ask for some flexibility as we try some things. And if they're, not working, we'll try some other things. But I think each principal has some good plans in place, and they're actually feeling pretty confident about their ability to greatly lessen the close contacts at lunchtime. And I will just also add, we have much to celebrate. The board knows they've been in our schools, seeing the students and teachers and principals together. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing to hear instructional conversations, to hear relationships being built, to hear kids excited to be with each other. And they're all working super hard. Our principals, October is really Principal Appreciation Month, and we can't appreciate them enough. The work they are doing behind the scenes to support students and teachers is truly remarkable in a normal year, and is more than I could describe right now. So I appreciate all of them working together. We have all of our classroom activities, our typical things that we would do in classrooms are happening. Sports and clubs are happening. I think you'll get to see our cross-country teams in the near future. They're being pretty successful, as we are used to in District 25. We seem to have some great runners out there, and so seeing them have the opportunity to do that again at a regional level this weekend is pretty exciting. We have plays planned. We will go on field trips again. We're starting to schedule field trips, and so that information will be coming out. As Nicole mentioned, the PTA is as active as ever, organizing some of those great community events that really accentuate why it's great to be in a school, whether you're a teacher or a student or a parent. And ABC 25, like Gina said, significant amount of grant money available to be awarded again this year that goes directly into classrooms impacting our kids. And at the recent ABC 25 meeting, they had kind of the two groups together, the grant volunteers and the race volunteers. Exciting to hear them talk about race plans again, happening later in the spring. The board commitment, I want to thank the board for all the work that you have done to get us to this point, and your commitment to add another special meeting for board development next week. I know those are extra nights on your calendar, and I just really appreciate you agreeing to the time, but even more so initiating an opportunity to be together to continue to talk about how we move forward in a collaborative and positive way. It's been an exhausting 18 months for every human on earth, and I just appreciate you asking to still continue to look at board development moving forward in that way, because you know it impacts our district. So excited that we'll be doing that again next week. It's truly been an all hands on deck start to the school year, and I'm sure parents are tired too. We are tired right now, but we're good tired, right? This is what we're used to, being tired in schools, but going home and sleeping well because we're so excited. It's an excited and happy tired, and it's nice to be back to that level. So that's just some quick updates. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Ms. Rich?
Lori, just a couple things. Regarding the academy programs, I'm a firm believer that, you know, we plan with what we know, and then reality happens, right? And so what are some things, as you and the staff have looked at that academy plan, would you recommend or you're making changes to right now in light of reality that happens?
Well, I think probably the main thing that we're continuing to watch is, well, probably the one thing that maybe was, I didn't expect as many students to be in the academy program as we are, but that was because when we started the year, we had the guidance of using test to stay even at lunch. We had the guidance of 3 feet at lunch. And so as that has changed, that's where most of our close contacts are at lunch. So the first thing after just watching those numbers is to see how our lunch changes impact that. Does that bring us back down to the single digits that I really had expected to be in the academy program? And if not, then we'll continue to be flexible and see what else we can do. There was some miscommunication with a couple of schools that kids couldn't have their classroom materials if they went to academy. Students can have their classroom materials if their teachers use, whether it's Schoology or Seesaw or whatever it is. I was with a few students that have a folder that has the next 2 weeks worth of work kind of in there, and they work out of that folder. They can have all of those materials at home if they wish to do that. That's not what we're doing in the academy. The academy program is continuing on grade level standards that might be different activities, but we know are the grade level standards that will be covered in a variety of ways throughout the school year. But some families have asked, can I just take the work that my child has and not be in the academy program? Yes, they can. What we don't want to do, however, the balance there is asking a teacher to write lesson plans to send home, right? So, and to organize, you know, specific directions for kids who have to go home because they could be doing that every day for a different group of students, as opposed to the occasional child that's sick. So we're trying to find that balance. We're continuing to watch that. I really think, again, we'll see, but we really believe if we can reduce the lunchroom close contact, we should really be down in single digits of students that would be accessing the academy program.
You know, Lori, just to that point, if there's a parent that, they should still be following that same process. Oh, sorry. So if a parent wants to engage with the teacher just to see how little Johnny and Susie are doing, then it's this normal process. Reach out to the teacher, the material, things of that nature. None of that has kind of changed during that quarantine process or anything like that.
Right, so if a parent wants to check in with the teacher and see how their child is doing, like at any other time, definitely they can do that.
Final question regarding the shield, and I know, again, I fully understand that's an evolution, and it sounds like it's each time we do it, we've done it a couple weeks or whatever, it's getting better. Would someone consider it disruptive yet still, or have we gone past that hump where the first time you do it, it's disruptive just because it's the first time? And are we, now are we down into it's no longer disruptive, there's a process.
Right, so definitely, students are leaving class to come to testing, right, depending on what time they're scheduled. The principals have put a lot of thought into that schedule to have as small an impact on instruction for those kids as possible. But already in the second week, the kids pretty much walk in, know what to do, walk back out. The first time we were giving them instructions on how to do it. The one thing that we're still working on, so last week we would pull the kids together, we'd talk them through the instructions, here's how it's going to work, then we'd get them settled, then they'd do it, then we'd show them how to turn it in. As opposed to this week, they come in, they know what to do, they turn it in. The one thing that we're continuing right now, though, is so every student gets a little tube and a little cylinder if they need one, and we have to ask the student their birth date and write their birth date on their tube. Right? So for many of our kids, that's easy. For our little ones, they're not sure when their birthday is. They know they went to a pool party on their birthday, right? So yeah, many of them know their birthdays. Some know the month and day, but the year they're still learning. So that can take some time. We're writing it on each child's tube. What we're working on. And Stacy and Brian and Chris Fano have been working really hard on this with Shield. We should be able to print out a QR code, and every student has a little, however we want to give it to them, a little card with a QR code or whatever. They walk in, we scan your QR, scan your tube, and you're gone. So we won't have to be doing writing the birthdays. Not that that's taking a significant amount of time, but it's a step that we're looking forward to getting past, hopefully by next week.
Sorry,
You said last.
I know, but as you started talking, you mentioned one thing. Because I want to commend the staff. I don't think I saw it in the update, but I think we're as part of our community involvement, we're a shield site for other areas as well, or other community groups as well.
Thank you. We are, again, anybody from a staff level or volunteer level, right? So that includes our Park District CAP employees who need to test. And then we've been reached out to, and we're offering that same shield testing calendar to our local fire and police who aren't able to, the testing that's provided for them is off of their work hour or their work time. So they can come here to any of our sites during our times as well.
That's great. All right. Well, I'm appropriately ending at the celebrations slide because I like to focus on the positive and the good things that we are doing with or without the mask mandate. All right, let's move on. I'm sorry. Nisha, go ahead.
I like that we touch on celebrations as well, so thanks for talking about that. But I want to go back one step back. Dr. Mann, could you kind of go over the opt-in procedures and how I saw that there was a number of increases in the opt-in. That's great. And so, and I know you continue to talk to superintendents in the area. So what are other districts comparatively who are opt-in? What are their rates like? And I know our rate is listed as a number. So it'd be helpful, like, to put that in a percentage too. And so just kind of
wrote that down earlier. I will tell you that. So currently we have 1,608 students opted in as of today. And I wrote it down, I don't know where I put it, something like 450 students who are vaccinated, right? So we're over 2,000 of our students that are vaccinated or testing out of about 5,400 students in our district. So So that's just good information. You definitely see that. And again, families can choose when vaccinations become available for younger ones if they wish to do that or not, just like the families are choosing for their 12-year-olds and over. But you definitely see at the 7th and 8th grade level at lunch, someone's positive. There might be 5 kids sitting by them, but 4 are vaccinated. They're not going home. So we do see that impact at the 7th and 8th grade level and lessening close contacts. And then in terms of opt-in, there is a couple different ways school districts are doing it, honestly, that we learned about recently. A couple of school districts are doing shield testing for anyone who wants to opt in, but the families must bring their child to the district office after school hours for that. Most school districts that are getting up and running, though, are doing it in schools like we are. Some districts are, have started. Some districts are going to start in a week or so. And anybody that has an opt-in arrangement like we do is seeing similar 25 to 35% participation in our area. There are some districts that have done an opt-out procedure where automatically everybody's signed up unless you actively opt out. And they definitely have a higher percentage of kids participating.
And I know at the last board meeting, to have an electronic so where are we with that? Or do principals think it's helpful? Of course, they know best what's happening in the schools. And then we talked about also printing out and it going home in Friday folder, but is that too much on the principal? So I want to be, kind of cognizant because they know what works best in their schools.
Yeah, again, we are, and we thought we would, we are seeing a continual sign up for participation, and we thought once it got started, that would occur. We did recently, through an email, give parents a reminder that they could, but it was the link, you could opt in or you could opt out, right? Because when we found out that Test to Stay could not be used for lunch, we thought we might see families that were like, well then, I don't want to do it anymore. And some people have definitely unenrolled, but as you see, we've actually seen an overall increase in enrollees. So we haven't changed the format yet. But we definitely can. We wanted to get up and running for a couple weeks, and we actually got up and running much more smoothly than we had expected. So we definitely soon will relook at, again, putting the information out there again in different ways and see if there are people who haven't signed up because they haven't been able to access it.
That'd be great. Like, I think the awareness piece for sure, for busy parents as reminders, but also the ease of accessibility to it. Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Mr. President?
Oh, I saw Gina first.
That's okay.
It's okay. It's because I'm sitting here.
She nudged me.
I'm in arm's reach. On shield testing, you noted that things are starting to smooth out with the students. Do we have any feedback from the teachers and the potential academic time that the students are leaving? How disruptive is this in the classrooms, and what is the teachers' feedback on how this is going from being the ones that it becomes actually very disruptive with kids coming in and out?
Yeah, so we asked them to give us a couple of weeks to get it up and running before we reach out to get that input. So we're in second week now, and we'll reach back out to them probably in a week or so and say, all right, how's it been, the impact for you? Our principals have done a great job at really trying to schedule kids so that, for an example, at the middle school, they want kids to go to the beginning of the period to get the gist of what's happening, then come, get their testing, then go back. And so they scheduled that on purpose so that kids could have the introductory information and be back before class was over. But we will reach out to teachers to get some more input, but we want to go the first 2 weeks and make sure that we feel it's in routine so they could give us some legitimate feedback on how we think it will be moving forward.
Okay, and then my other question would be the students that are missing out on that time, understanding whether or not it's impacting them. And so we should think about how would we look at that? How could we measure that? Especially if it's a significant amount of time. And depending, obviously, on what they're missing, right?
Yeah, and again, what we're, see if I can go back there. Yeah, it's taking middle school kids 2 minutes from the time they walk in the door to they walk out. Again, is it taking them longer in the hallway? We'd have to see that. And our elementary school kids are more at the 5 to 8 minutes when they're in the room with us. And so it's also once a week, right? So, but we'll definitely take a look at that over time.
Okay. And then going back now into the academy, on the academy, I know you noted that we've definitely modified, and now parents can get information directly from their teacher, their student's teacher.
Well, let me clarify that, right? They can ask, of course, how their student's doing. They can get their materials, but we're not having teachers write up, you know, exactly what's going on and what they should be doing.
Got it. So my question on that would be, if we're getting the material, so I come in and I get all my students' books from the education happening in their regular classroom, are we, with normal absentee, right? The information is available by the end of the day on a daily basis. For academy and the quarantined students, are we getting the information, and are we getting like a daily, are we gonna be giving them a daily email, or are we just getting the information and getting a 2-week span of, here's the gist, do pages 1 through 20?
So a parent doesn't have, a child who's in the academy doesn't have to do anything from their general classroom. They're instead in a different classroom now with different assignments, excused from the work from their on-site classroom. And during the time that they are in the academy, which could be, again, they could be out of school for 5 days or 7 days, including the weekend, or 10 days if they don't want to test, including the weekend. Their classroom is that academy classroom. Some families are saying, but I still want my child's materials from class because I want to work on some other things from those materials. So they can do that in addition to the academy class if they choose to, but they don't have to, and the teacher's not going to grade that information. They're not going to hold kids accountable for that information. But some kids and some families, and I get it, well, I want my regular math book, or I want my spelling book that I started working on, or I know I have this at one school, it's a purple folder that already has the work for the week that we're going to do in my class. I will also want to do that in addition to the academy. So it's not like when someone's sick on an occasion, you know, a student is sick from school, and whatever the school's rules are, whether it's you get it at the end of the day or after 3 days, in some schools it's after 3 days, then the teacher will put together your materials. Instead, you're going to the alternate required remote program and doing all the work that's from that room. So we're not having teachers write up. So Gina's out today, so Gina, here's what we're doing, here's what you're gonna miss, do pages 4, 8, and 6. We're not doing that. In some classrooms, and especially at the middle school, some of that might already be on Seesaw or Schoology. So again, a student can go on to, at the middle school, for example, onto their Schoology account, be like, oh, here's what they're working on in my class. It's not required that they do that. The teacher's not going to ask for that information. The teacher's not going to grade that information. But if a student wants to follow along and do that, they can. But their classroom is the academy program during that quarantine time.
Okay, so with the middle students in the Schoology, that I understand, last year, even after we went back, we still had a lot of good information available to parents because of exactly Seesaw. That seems to have diminished this year. Was that conscious, or was that just, okay?
Yeah, we are not requiring that all staff use an electronic format to put their assignments on this year. Last year, because it was a large part of our experience, teachers were amazing and did a lot of quick training and moved to that dual platform. They're in class in that electronic platform, but we're not requiring that at this point this year.
Okay. Thank you.
I am, thank you. Dr. Mine, I was wondering, would there be a meaningful way we could, in the way the dashboard's set up, to report close contact quarantines, and understanding from your comments earlier, of course, this is a fluid number, but that, some kind of averaging or something like that where we could give, people a sense of what's happening?
So we can continue to look at that. The reasons for close contacts are so varied, with most of our students who are out on close contact being close contacts to things outside of school, right? So what we've struggled with is putting a close contact number out there and afraid that people would be like, this is how many close contacts are happening in school.
Okay.
Where those close contacts are from so many different things. Okay. Some are siblings, some are a family member, some are outside of school events, and a few, and some are in school, but it's really a small number when you look at the other categories. So what we've tried to do with our dashboard is put information that we know is solid, easy to understand information, and that aligns with what we're required to collect and report. So we're not creating another step for our staff. But we can continue to look at that. Again, even putting an average there's so many explanations to it, but we'll continue to look at that. I know a few people have asked for what's the total number of exclusions, I guess, so positives and exclusions. I just think that we will have a comment there that will say, this encompasses the following things, and there's like 10 different things, right? Sure. So we'll continue to look at that. We just, at this point, haven't felt comfortable that it's been a real understandable, meaningful data point. Yeah. But we can keep looking at that.
Yeah, and along the same lines, so your answer may be along, but I'll throw it out there as well, is I'm thinking about it in terms of, you talked about the academy and like how many kids were in there, and you mentioned 2 days we had this many. So whether it's academy or quarantine, like what's the average length as well? So it's, right, like, we're so used to thinking 14 days, and we know now there's so many, it might be a 2-day quarantine, and any quarantine is, you're missing school, of course, but knowing the scope of it, and just suggesting if there's a way to capture that so we know that might be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. That, maybe there's a way that we can take so we have a spreadsheet required by the Department of Public Health, right? That is limited viewing, basically our nurses and 1 or 2 administrators. And there might be a way for us to take that and have it do an automatic calculation that just shows like number of kids in academy today. And you'll see that number will go like this, because it truly could be 10 today, 1 tomorrow, 8 the next day, 0, 0, 6, 20. Like it really has so many reasons kids are in there and lengths of time. But that might be something we could put together.
Well, and I think it just goes to, people look at that dashboard because that's their window into what's happening in our district. And right, it might be crazy, but that might be the information we need to see, even though it's not a nice trend line. You know. Yeah.
The other thing, I think the board is still aware, but we still are sending, so we do the weekly view on the dashboard, but we're still sending a letter to every family in a school whenever there's a positive case. We're identifying the classroom where that positive case, or at the middle school, the grade level team, where that's happening. So in addition to the weekly view, if there's a case at, Adams School, the families are getting a letter as soon as we're aware. All families at Adams School get a letter that there's a positive case.
And thank you. And I'll finish just, Brian, you kind of went there, but just thanking you for those celebrations. We have so many topics we're putting our, time and energy in, but recognizing all the people that are doing great work and all the great things that are happening with our kids despite the challenges. So thank you for bringing those up.
Mr. President, I do have one question.
All right,
Chad. The academy, how are students with IEPs and things of that nature being, because I know there's certain things they have to do, and I understand they go to this academy, but I want to make sure, how do parents understand how that's being impacted too, because obviously those special sessions need to continue to happen.
Thank you. So one of our academy teachers is a special education teacher, and what typically is planned, I don't even know if we've had any students at this point that have been in there, which is why he's been able to partner with the 3rd through 5th grade teacher some. But so a student with an IEP would go to their, if they are typically in a grade level classroom and maybe receive resource support, they would go to the typical grade level academy class, but then the special education teacher would partner and would work on things within that class or within small groups, doing breakout groups, so that students' IEP goals and minutes are continuing to happen. If it's a student in an instructional program, that would be with a special educator more time of the day. Then again, they can log in straight to that special educator, and their IEP goals and minutes are being addressed by that person, which is something more than we did when we first went into remote learning years, however long ago that was, that we now do have someone with special education that's doing those minutes and goals.
One last question, just on the timeout, right? I understand we're not giving lessons planning, but is there any way that we're trying to measure that quarantine timeout, that now when the students actually have to come back, I'm curious, like math, right? So if you're doing a section of math, you can't go to another class and do something over here, but when you come back, it's a building block, right? You gotta be there for that entire time. What is the time that's actually then causing in disruption? I'm just trying to understand from a teacher's perspective, now that they have to go back and potentially, if they had 2 kids out because of a close contact, they may have to spend extra time with that. So are we measuring that, and do we understand what that impact really is?
Yeah, we're starting to collect really some more qualitative data on that. And again, our hope is with lunch changes, that will kind of almost be a non-issue moving forward.
Yeah, I want to add on to what Chad was saying, because as we know, curriculum gets scaffolded, right? So when they miss, I think just reassurances for parents, because it's also a different model. For one, we're all really sad that students have to go to quarantine academy. That, of course, none of us want that, right? It's not ideal. But that when they go there, another change in paradigm is that it's multi-age. So there's 3 to 5, so that it's like, well, is my child's needs being met? So some reassurances that, and almost like more information, like Greg was saying, for parents to understand that, hey, what is the curriculum? It's multi-age, but is the curriculum vastly different from what's happening in classroom? And will they, when the student comes back to class, will they feel lost and not know where they're going to go off next? So the learning gap that we're all concerned about. So how does this all happen in multi-age? Because it is a different paradigm for us all to understand, right?
Yeah, we can put some information out, and like you mentioned, our curriculum scaffolds in District 25, right? So you never just learn something once, right? It comes back as well. So we can put some more information out.
Mr. President, Lori, I want to go back to the academy thing, because as I've been thinking about it, I'm confused. In terms of what a parent's expectation should be if they go, what material are they going to get? Because on the one side, I think a parent has the option to say, no, we're not going to have little Susie and Bobby go to the quarantine academy, which then I assume they get all the material and the lesson plans or something of that nature. But if they do decide to go to the quarantine academy, they potentially get nothing unless the parent asks. I get it. But if they ask, are they just getting little Johnny's math book, or are they getting, hey, we're going to cover chapters 3 to 4? Again, not the lesson plan, but something that says this is what we're going to cover over the next 2-3 days, or something that I'm just confused on, because I'm not hearing. I'm just confused based on what you've said today so far.
So clarification: if a student is positive or a close contact and therefore needs to be excluded from school for some amount of time, they automatically are enrolled in the academy program. If a parent says, I'm not going to send my child to the academy program, I'm just going to keep them home and work with them at home, they don't then get lesson plans like you described, right? What the option that families have right now during this pandemic this year is, if your child has to be excluded because of the pandemic, is to go to the academy program. If you choose to keep them home, you of course can always choose to keep your child home, but we're not then providing you more information than we would have if you went to the academy program. The information you get is the same. If you don't have to do any of your classroom things, right? And most people are not. Most people are going to the academy and following the standards and lessons that are happening in the academy. But if I say, but I'd rather work with my child at home for whatever reason, the academy doesn't work for me or whatever it is, I'd rather work with my child at home. I, of course, have the right to do that and may have many reasons to do that, but the teacher's not providing me more details than the teacher would have provided me if my child's in the academy class. So can you have your child's materials? Of course you can. Anything that they typically could take home, they can still take home. They don't necessarily need it, but if you want that, of course you can do that. But we have a way to continue instruction, and that's through the academy program. So if a parent is not choosing that, we're not then asking our teachers to write out more information for this individual child. Is that, so it's not, you had thought that if I said no academy, then I get more information. That's not true.
The way I'm interpreting is basically they can get their books and everything, and they can say, you're out for the next 4 days, just use an example. They're not going to write up any lesson plan and saying this is what we're covering, but if little Johnny, little Susie, as Rich like to say, says, hey, we were in chapter 3 and this is what we were doing, the parent has the option just to continue with chapter 3 to go through that and work with them. It's not... Well,
if I want to ask a classmate,
right,
what did you guys do today, right? I could get information that way. But it's extra, it's not work that's getting turned in. It's not, right?
There's no expectation of grading or anything. It's just really just they're going to do that. Or they can go to the academy where they're going to get the basic standards for their appropriate grade level. And I guess if they don't go to the academy, I mean, so just from an attendance perspective, because I don't know how that all functions either. If they just don't show up, is that an attendance issue? I mean, just so we understand, like...
It's coded as QA, I believe, which is quarantine absence, but it doesn't have an impact on...
Talk about truancy and things of that nature, and I just...
And we wouldn't consider it truant.
I just want to make sure,
Good question. Yeah, we would not consider it truant.
Okay, thank you.
Just, hey, I'm good. All right. Can we move on to the strategic plan, family and community goal update?
So just an update for the board. As you know, we're still in our beginning stages with our action teams, but we're going to begin reporting out each month what's happening with, we'll take an action team each month. So this month is the family and community goal, which is to strengthen family and community relationships to enhance learning, teaching, and partnerships. And the board sees the objectives that go with that goal. The Family Community Action Team really had a great in-person meeting. So as a reminder, we had all 5 teams together for a review of kind of the state of the district. And then we had our first in-person meetings where we broke into our teams. This Family and Community Action Team, like all of ours, has a combination of parents, community members, teachers, administrators. On the Family and Community Action Team is Melissa Andrews, Maria Brower, Kim Dyer, Janine Flauter, Adam Harris, Carrie Holt, Jessica Leffelman, Katie Roush, Mike Regilio, Kate Reno, Lauren Respka, Lisa Soro, Sylvester Stepanek, and Monica Tietz. The group was very positive and productive when we met in September. In addition to the activities that we engaged in to get to know each other, to share our intentions and our expectations of being in this group, we began our brainstorm of items that the group actually wants to consider as objectives. So each group is working on, so what are we going to do, right? What is this action team? What's the practical things they want to see happen under each goal? And so we have a beginning list of items. When we meet later this month, we'll continue to brainstorm. We'll prioritize the items of what is most important to the group. And then between this month and next month, we will determine how the group thinks we would measure whether we have success in implementing these items. And for the Family and Community Action Team, one additional thing they have, a task that we'll work on, is creating a family and community survey to get input from the larger District 25 community. So I've listed for the board the beginning brainstorm, and there's quite a few really great things on there. But again, those really, we need to kind of flesh those out some more. So we'll bring them back to when we feel they're in a closer to final state. And again, it's a group of participants really having a lot of different backgrounds, representing the different schools and areas of our district. And yet I can confidently say everybody left really feeling pretty excited about what we're going to do together, and the time that we had to come from very different backgrounds, but all kind of have a common goal of reconnecting our communities and families to all that we do.
All right, good stuff. Any comments or questions on that program or process? No? All right, thank you, Dr. Bine. Do we have any additional community inputs, Lana? Oh.
I have an issue. Obviously, I'm the one that wrote into the board about missing lesson plans. I don't care that my kids are not going to be counted or graded on it. I want them to learn what they're missing. They're not covering that in the academy. That's my concern. What are they missing? Why is this a problem? I think it's disgusting that you think this is not a big deal. In theory, it sounds great. My kids lived the reality last week. They didn't learn anything. You need to rethink that.
All right. Future agenda items? Oh, sorry.
Hi. Hi, Marianne Zaleski. Okay, so a few things. With the SHIELD program, I'm glad that it is going well for some people. I feel that it is dismissive of some of the people that have not been doing well with it. I'm not going to say who, but you have some staff members that have communicated to me that said kids are crying and kids are having panic attacks because of the SHIELD program. So I think you need to do some type of feedback from either the children, the parents, the teachers, while I cannot pretend to be you and see what you see, but I don't know that all is well, so try not to be dismissive. I've also heard that there's about 15 minutes of class that is being missed. While it's reporting 5 to 8 minutes, it ends up being more like 15 minutes. And as a teacher, when you have a certain set amount of time with the students, right, you plan accordingly, and then if kids are coming in and coming out, it is disruptive. And I know you said that you asked the teachers to be patient, and I'm sure they can be, but that's, if this is going to be a year-long thing, like that, there's going to be issues with that. I hope you anticipate. Yeah, so just get the feedback from the people that are actually witnessing it and participating in it. The second thing is back to the academy. I understand that Zooming in is not an option anymore, even though that would be logically the easier thing to do. So here's the thing, right? So, we have Schoology, we have Seesaw, we have all these different platforms where teachers can use to, you can upload things to and scan worksheets into. A lot of times that's already there. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand. I heard you, Dr. Bine, you said for parents to ask classmates, but then they can't ask their teacher for homework if they're in the academy. Ask a classmate for what their homework was, but not the teacher. And I don't know, coming from a teacher, I've probably over the years that I did teach had plenty of emails from parents who their kids were out or on vacation or whatever, obviously. And, you just quickly be like, we're going to be working for English teaching, right? We're going to read chapters 2 through 5. So if little Johnny can do that, that would be great. I don't know. I don't know why that's such a difficult thing, but I really have a hard time with you saying ask a classmate, but you can't ask a teacher. I don't know what that is. So I don't know. I'm just asking for maybe some more clarification and a better way for parents to feel that their kids are learning something rather than not. So, okay.
All right. Future agenda items, topics with dates to be determined. We got a Special Olympics update.
There is one community member request that was submitted for the board to consider adding to a future agenda. The intent to have a unified Special Olympics program starting in the fall of 2022. I'll just, some background for the board as a reminder that, thank you, the board did approve significant stipends for us to move forward with a traditional Special Olympics program, with the plan being that this spring we would have the track program, and starting next fall we'd be adding the basketball program. We are all very interested in a unified program, similar to what we're doing, especially at Thomas, that has a similar program, though it's not through Special Olympics. But as a reminder, it was Special Olympics that shared with us that they strongly recommend we actually start traditional and get that going before we move to a unified. So anyway, this was a community member submitted this request for the board to determine if they want to add this topic onto an agenda in the next couple of months or so.
All right. So, anybody have any comments or input on that?
I'm just wondering if may not be maybe a separate agenda, but I know we talked about getting an update as the planning comes forward, and maybe as that planning, or even after the event in the spring, that would be a logical, maybe not a separate agenda item, but be part of that discussion at that point, just to bring that up again.
Yeah, I was going to agree. I was going to say, I think we should see what happens in the spring to kind of get our like, I mean, I think the Special Olympics were very clear. They want us to try to get our feet wet right initially with the process and then go to the full. And it makes sense because there's a lot of coordination behind the scenes, I'm sure, that we are not aware of, right? So it makes sense to have that update then and decide where we go.
I would agree. All right.
Otherwise, we could use some feedback from the board on that attachment on the general board meeting topics. We did add a second column. The board had kind of asked that we add to this annual list things specific to this current school year, if we understand that correctly. So you'll see we added kind of a right-hand column of topics specific to this school year. For example, in the fall, doing a kindergarten update. We did one in August. We look to do the next one in November. The Special Olympics update that we did in August and September. And now we'll make sure that we add that. Oh, we've got it already in the spring for this year. Migrant student policy procedures, we plan to bring you in November, et cetera. So I just want to make sure this meets what the intent of the board was.
At least in my view, Lori, I'm sorry, it's getting there. Just a little bit, because there was one other piece to it that I think we talked about. The second column was going to be more about the dates. So the first column was going to be an example here, like 5 essentials report, and then it's more of a targeting. You think you'll be talking about that in November. You'll be talking about that in August. And so, the kindergarten update would just be on the left-hand side. We just know that these are all the topics we anticipate in the fall, and this is when we're targeting to do it. And that way we can just track, oh, we did it, or, oh, we got to move it to the winter because of, something of that nature.
Okay, and then because some of these are this year specific, we'll just color code them or something. Okay. Does that meet the board's need?
Is like also, some of these I know are just regular items that we do every single, and it'd be nice if there was color coded, this was just the annual process or something of that nature, due to the fact that I know we have to do the budget. I know in December we have to do the posting, we have to do, right, all those things. So it'd just be nice to, okay, those are normal, typical, right? So it makes sense.
All right. Well, we finished the closed session, in closed session, so I think, oh, sorry. Yeah, new topics. Anyone?
So, Dr. Bine, are we going to see the academy updates and the shield testing updates as part of your normal superintendent report, or should they be added?
We'll do a school year update like we have been doing for the past couple of years, maybe not at every single meeting, but probably monthly.
Okay.
The only topic I had, Brian, was, I know I mentioned this back in September because I wasn't at the last meeting, was the letter of dissent from the perspective about local control. I know, right, we have talked about not going against the mandate, but I do think it's important for a board. A lot of boards are doing it. They're not necessarily not following, but they are giving the governor the thought and everybody of a, hey, this should be local control. At some point in time, we have to get that back. Otherwise, we will continue down this path. And I think it should be a conversation. I realize it could be a vote, and we may not agree, but I still ask that we put that as a future topic.
Agreed.
Okay.
And I would say whether you call it a letter of dissent or just a letter of, we want you to understand our situation, right? And the things that we've experienced as a part of this year, that could be the board telling their story to ISB or the governor or whoever, that here's the challenges we've had this year. Whether it's the board, that way, it may be difficult for the board to say, I want to dissent or not, but I definitely could communicate, here's things that we've had to struggle with.
However we can communicate what the experience has been, right? And this is not for me, right? I'm struggling with the fact, I don't like mandates in general. I don't care if it's for pro-mask or anti-mask. I don't want the mandates, because at the end of the day, it's creating an unnecessary divide within our communities. And it's like, as a board, right, we want some local control here to have some of these abilities ourselves. If we as a board said we wanted to mass mandate, then that would be something because we know our controls better than what Springfield does. And I think that's something we should be able to say clearly, right? Because at the end of the day, the whole idea of a republic is you are designed to be locally controlled, and that's what we are from a board perspective. So I think we have to start thinking that way. I'm not asking to like go crazy and say, let's go away from the mandates, but I do think we are on this board for a reason, and we have to have some voice is heard. That's all I'm asking.
Yep, I would agree with that.
So just to make sure, so you're asking that we
talk about
bring it up.
And I think it should be a vote.
Do you want us to draft a example
I
letter?
would like to see a draft of an example letter, something,
Okay.
because I've seen a bunch what other school boards have done, and they have not gone against the mandate, but they have talked about local control, talked about the importance, talk about that, and I think it's important, right? I'm not asking for us to go against the mandate. What I'm asking for is that the school board has authority to do things, and we need to make sure that authority stays within our local market.
So we can draft a letter with some of what I'm hearing you say, and then the board can talk about what
Dr.
they
Bryan,
want.
can we add to that letter that, like, what is that end game?
Oh, like some of the questions we heard tonight?
Yes.
Mr. President, respectfully, I think we're having the discussion now.
Good point.
And
Noted.
I
No,
would,
yeah.
I would like to hold on a draft until we have the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So have the discussion on a
Please.
future agenda.
Yeah,
and
the
then-
discussion should feed the
Yes,
documentation.
that sounds like an action to me. We're
Okay.
not there yet.
Agreed, and that's what I'm saying, I just want that to put on as a conversation.
Got it, thank you.
All righty, good point. Any other new topics? All right. I need a motion to adjourn. Nope.
Mr. President.
Yes,
I
Rich.
move we adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Gina. All right. All in favor? Aye. 6-0, we are adjourned.